Good evening and welcome to Ashland Select Board's meeting for October 20th, 2021. I will call the meeting to order at 7:02. And with that, I have a quick read that I have to do in accordance with the governor's order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 20. All meetings are being conducted remotely following these requirements of the open meeting law. Please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast by WACA-TV. The town of Ashland, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, is currently following the guidance from the Ashland Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus. For those who were looking to join the meeting, the Zoom meeting ID number is 815-5749-2794, and the passcode is 950050. With that, I welcome everybody to the meeting, and I will open it up to citizens' participation. Do I have anybody here this evening? Good evening, Mr. DeSoni. If you could unmute yourself, thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, Chairman, Board, and all on the call here. How everybody's doing so far tonight?
Well, if the Red Sox can come back to win, we're doing fine.
No comment, because his turned it off. I'm only here for one quick to the our town manager. If it's okay through you, Mr. Chairman. It's a recent subject.
Yep.
Okay, I would like to thank the town manager for bringing forth the Mapc forum last night. And I've taken the comments that I had and the comments I put in the chat box throughout the call. And I got answers back, and everything was very informal and fair on both sides, and compromising with what can be, how it could be, and understanding that housing can be different in all different ways or forms. So I understood that from the Mapc side of things. It was good, informative, and I got my comments in. I thank the town manager and to Brandy. Good read at the very beginning, introduction. It was good to hear your voice away from this board. Doing all that.
I'm glad you were able to join us.
Yep, and I hope that all the comments that came through are in the way of understanding, that people can understand what's going on to work together in the town for fair housing to come through. That's it. Thank you.
Mark, I do have to say I appreciate the thoughts, but I can't really take credit for that. That's really the steering committee and our planning staff, our planning director. So, but thanks. I do appreciate it. And I'm glad you participated.
Yeah, it was a very enlightening meeting and lively discussion. A lot of good questions were asked by those who were in attendance. And thank you, Brandy, and the committee for doing a great job in getting that prepared for that forum last night. So thank you again. Do I have anybody else for citizens participation? I see Ms. Ring, are you just, I'm not sure if you have any questions or comments, or you're good to go. Okay. Chuck, how about you? Apparently not. Okay. With that, seeing that there are no others, go ahead, Chuck. You just unmuted.
I'm fine. I'm just finishing dinner, so I didn't want to be on Zoom.
Quite all right, not a problem. I wasn't sure if you had a question.
No.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We have a few minutes before we begin. We have a hearing at 7:15, which I will have to read the hearing notice. So if the board will allow me to skip down to the consent agenda.
Sorry, Joe, we were going to do community
Oh, you're right.
Media Day?
Okay. Yeah, if you want, yeah, this is actually a good time to do it. Yolanda, I'll
Great.
turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Today is Community Media Day, and I just have a statement that I'd like to read. WACA-TV is an integral member of the Ashland community, providing coverage of live meetings, sports coverage, not only to Ashland, but nationwide. And through the pandemic and at other times, they have worked with their content creators to find creative ways to keep the community entertained and informed. So I want to thank Barbara and Peter, Barbara and Paul, who run the station, as well as people like Allison, and of course, Connor, who's helping us run this meeting tonight. Through their work at WACA-TV, we have kept informed as a community. We've stayed connected as a community. And again, not just through COVID, but before that and even now after it. So I just want to congratulate them and thank them for being our community media station here in Ashland.
Thank you, Yolanda. And I don't think anybody on the board will dispute that in any way, shape, or form. It's a great venue, a great tool for the entire town. And in the early years of cable, when we had them on Elliott Street in a back room way down a long hallway, they have come full circle to have their own station and location down off of Nickerson Road. Though it is in little repair right now, and hopefully they'll be back in their home sooner than later. So congratulations, and we appreciate all the work that they have done for us and will continue to do for us down the road. We are still a little early. We have 7 minutes before our 7:15 Eversource hearing. So I would entertain going down to the consent agenda. And do I need to read each one of those before we vote on them, or can we just put that up on the screen so everybody can see it?
You ready to entertain a motion to approve as presented?
I am.
Second.
Okay. There was a motion that's seconded. Voice vote, please, for the consent agenda.
Reeves, aye.
Chair, aye.
Mitchell, aye.
Kinsman, aye.
Mignani, aye. So that's 5-0. And so the consent agenda has passed. Greatly appreciate that.
Joe, if I could quickly add,
Sure.
so Rosalind Rubin, who is going to be the new transitional assistance coordinator at the community center, was actually at our Lions meeting last night and introduced herself. She has so much energy and is looking so forward to being part of our community. It was great to meet her, and I look forward to when she starts actually helping out.
When is her start date?
I think she said November 4th.
4th?
Yeah.
Great. Well, welcome. It's a great job, and Rosalind will have her hands full for sure.
Yep.
Very good. Very,
Or
very
do you
good.
want to move to the night work? That should be relatively.
Yeah, we can do that. I was asked to bring this up, and we can do it under old new business, but at the same token, there is a request to do some night work on Route 126 to do some repaving. So that way the patchwork can be replaced with a better binder coating as the winter months come upon us. And it's kind of difficult to do it during the day. So we've been asked, petitioned by Eversource and through the DPW to allow them to work, I guess it's Monday through Thursday, and I think the hours are from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. To do this work. And it may take short, it may not take as long, but they're requesting that those hours and those days. It may take 2 days, it may take 4 days, but if they get it done sooner, it would be less. And I think it's to help relieve some of the tension and people driving down here. So,
Excuse me, Joe.
yes,
I think you may have said 126. It's actually 135 that the work is being done. It's at the intersection.
that's another one. This
Yeah,
is
Yeah, Joe, I'm sorry. I meant the one that was under night work on the agenda, not going down to 126. I apologize. I should.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
the one I was referring to is the one on 135 where they're going to remove the concrete islands and replace. them
Right,
with
that's
asphalt.
the Union and Fountain Street
Exactly.
project. Yeah.
So that's to, help create 2 lanes for the fire apparatus when the new building comes on board. So they're looking for, hours of operation of 7 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Okay.
And do we know when they're planning on doing this? And do we have to put that in our motion, or are we just?
I'd like to, if it's okay to have it to be determined, we'll keep it as brief as possible, but I know there's still some preliminary work that needs to happen before they get a solid date.
Okay.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion on
Can I
that.
just a quick question on that?
Sure,
So
Rob.
I don't think it's, if I'm visualizing right, there's not really many people living around there. Is that right? Very close.
Correct.
That's
Yeah,
very
so
commercial.
I just want to make sure we're not looking at a lot of night noise that could bother people as a result of it.
Mhm.
Oh, is that?
I don't think, yeah, Rob, I don't think it's a heavily residential area at all. That's, Ashland Animal Hospital, I believe, the plaza
Yeah.
across the street.
Okay.
And you have Fitzy's down, the Fitzy's Car Wash, and then there's the old Carpenters Union building.
Yeah.
Okay.
That area, so that's the area that we're referring to. So I would definitely entertain a motion at this point, unless there is any additional questions regarding that, to allow that work to proceed between the hours of 7 and 5 a.m.
Didn't we have a motion in a second or not?
No, we didn't.
If not, so moved.
Okay.
Second. I'll
thank
second
you.
that.
Okay, thank you. Voice vote, please.
Greaves, aye.
Mitchell, I.
Here I.
Kinsman, I.
And yeah, that's 5-0. So Dougie, you can let the powers to be know that you can start working whenever you want to, hopefully sooner than later, before the snow flies.
Another road under construction.
Another road under construction. Yes.
Yeah, so now we're down to 1. That's not being worked up.
Yeah. Definitely
Okay.
appreciate everybody's patience.
Oh, yes. It's not an easy thing. Everybody would like to see these projects get completed, or they like the idea of it, but then now they're actually seeing what's taking place. And again, once it's all done, the town will be much better for it, for sure. Okay. It's almost that time. It's 7:14. So by the time I get to reading the legal notice, it'll be 7:15. Do we have a representative from Eversource here?
I do not see one, Joe.
Nah, neither did I. I wasn't sure if anybody was in the waiting room. Okay, well, at
I'm not
least,
seeing anyone.
okay. Do we need to have someone there? Because if there's questions to be asked, they would be the people to ask, right?
Well, they would. I think if you've had an opportunity to review the backup, you'll see the petition from Mr. Shafani for the electric grant of location. And then there is a layout. So just for
Right.
everybody's to be familiar with the area, this is off of Whittemore. This is leading to Burnham Circle, which is a new subdivision that's being constructed. Well, behind those the new houses there on Whittemore.
Yeah. All right, so allow me to at least read the the legal notice. Notice is hereby given that the Select Board will conduct a hearing regarding an application for a grant of location to install approximately 51 plus or minus feet of conduit on Whittemore Drive, AKA AC Whittemore Drive. The applicant is N-Star Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy. Whittemore Drive, work order number 555-1287, Ashland, Mass. 01721. A public hearing will be held on this matter on Wednesday, October 20th, 2021 at 7:15 p.m. Parties wishing to be heard in this matter are invited to attend the public hearing or by logging into the Zoom meeting. Interested parties who are unable to attend the hearing may submit written comments to the Select Board's office, Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass. 01721, or by emailing Sue Roby at sroby@ashlandmass.com. And signed by me, Joseph Vignani, the Chair of the Select Board. Susan, have we received any emails, either pro or con, regarding this hearing?
We did not receive anything, and it looks like Christine is coming in through the waiting room right now.
Okay, great.
Chris, is that you that just called in?
It is me, I'm sorry. I was
Okay,
having a hard time getting through.
all right, Joe has opened the public hearing.
Yeah,
Okay.
just got done, Chris. Go ahead.
Okay, for Whittemore Drive,
Yes.
yes, we're requesting a grant of location to install approximately 51 feet of conduit and a new splice box number 2996 on Whittemore Drive. And the purpose of that would be to provide the new electric service for the residential development, Burnham Circle.
Okay. And that'll be a dig across, right? From one side of Whittemore to the opposite side, going into the
Yes.
new Burnham Circle.
Yes, it will, yep.
Okay. Any questions from board members?
Not necessarily a question, but a comment, just that we request that they return it to its status in regards to how the paving is as best as possible after
Okay,
they do the digging.
Yep.
That'll be good. Especially with the members.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Yeah, just, and I don't know if Christine can or anybody else, but this is a new development. Are we expecting to get a similar request for gas pipeline permit? And where's that in the whole sequence of events?
There is no
Yeah,
gas up there, Rob.
Oh,
It's propane.
oh, that's interesting. So everybody in that area has to use propane.
In that, and those new houses off of Whittemore and going into that. it'd be
Oh, that's
propane.
okay. That's interesting. Well, we should probably try to lobby people to not even use propane, to use electricity for all their needs, given our net zero plan and climate change. So, okay, that's thanks for answering that.
Not a problem. Okay, any additional questions or concerns? Go ahead, Brandy.
So I was wondering what the proposed date was that you were going to be doing the conduit, and if there's going to be notification to the residents on Whitmore.
Well, the notifications went out. Oh, you mean for during the time of the installation?
Yes, yes.
I'm not sure if they send out notifications. I don't know if that's something that's done like through the hearing process, but I can check in on that to see if that's something that we normally do.
Okay, just to let the residents in that area know that work is going to be done, prior to the conduit being laid.
Okay.
That'd be great.
It would be nice to know as well, Brandy, thank you for bringing that up. We do have a couple of school buses that go up that hill. So if they have to detour to find another, way to getting up that hill, if there's going to be a hole across the roadway, we would need that notification as well, Christine. So if you could let us know that date well in advance, that would be helpful.
Okay.
I would think, Joe, that if they're going to block the road completely, they'd have to submit something to the police department, right? To let us know.
Yeah, yes, they'd have to
So-
put a detour sign and have a detail.
Right.
officer there.
Though,
Right.
if other ones that you've seen like this, they do one side of the road and then they do the other side of the road. So,
Yep. So Christine, I'm assuming this is going to be a trench, a simple trench that's dug.
Yeah.
Through
Yeah.
there. So they would need to get a road opening permit.
Yeah, they'll have to get a street opening permit and whatever kind of conditions that are placed in the street opening permit, we would comply with that as well.
Sounds good to me.
so we have to approve the placement of it,
That's correct.
and then the other steps
Right.
they take with other areas. Okay.
So at this point, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the placement of the box that Eversource is requiring based on the information prepared and presented in our packets.
I'll second that.
There's a second. Okay, Brandy seconds that. Voice vote, please.
Greaves, aye.
Mitchell, I.
Here, I,
Kinsman, aye.
And Yanni, aye. So that's 5-0. So Christine, if you can get us the dates and times, that would be very, very helpful for us all.
Okay, and just a quick, were there any questions from abutters at all?
No, we did not receive any either via email. There is nobody here this evening that I see that's on as participants for this.
Okay, and I'm sorry, what was that you said you wanted from me again? Just about,
Well, the date and time, and they also have to get a road opening permit through the DPW.
right, and then also to let the residents know when the work will be done,
Correct.
and the town as well.
Yes.
Yes.
All right,
Joe, there's someone with a hand up. Krause's.
Okay. Krause's.
I'm
Okay.
one of the abutters actually, and I'm right by that corner. And I was wondering, and that's my question, I was wondering, where is that conduit going to go? Because there's already been, my driveway already been torn up by this project, so, and I have a box right in front of my house. I'm at 36 Whittemore. So where is
yes,
that box
no,
going? And it will
nowhere.
affect my driveway.
is your question about the box?
Yes, where is it going? And also, will it affect my driveway already being torn because there's some electricity going from from the box right in front of my house?
Okay, so your house is on the same side as Burnham Circle? that
Yes,
road?
it is.
Okay, the box that we're putting in is across the street, and it's in like a dirt wooded area, and the box is flat to the ground. There's no height in it at all. It's flush to the ground. And the reason for that is because the primary lines going down Whittemore Drive are on that side of the street. So in order for us to splice into that, we have to put in that splice box. And that way then we can install the conduit across the street. And then that conduit across the street will go in on the private property of Burnham Circle to a transformer that's on Burnham Circle.
Mrs. Kraus, is your house after after Burnham Circle, or is it the house before it?
It's the house right up the hill from Burnham Circle.
Okay. All right. So your
Are you
driveway.
Are you beside Burnham Circle on either side or further down?
Right by it, right. I'm the one that they keep tearing my driveway up for this, because there is a box, an electric box. They already did some conduit work, and there's an electric box right in front of my house. It's 36 Whittemore. It's the one. It was something
Oh, wow,
3,
yeah.
lot 3, and then there's a box there that they already pulled electricity, tore my driveway, and went into the street.
Mrs. Krause, I actually put up on the screen, I don't know if you're able to see it, the actual diagram that shows the intersection of Whittemore and Burnham. And
Yes.
you'll see that bolded red line as well as the box there at the top of it. That's the splice box that Eversource is looking to install. And that's actually, that bolded red line is where the conduit's going to go. So I don't
And
know.
that's
if
on
that
the
helps you.
other side of Burnham Circle from where I
Yeah.
am.
Okay.
And then there'll be a trench that'll be dug across the road into Burnham Circle area for the tie-in.
Yes,
But that'll be on private property, correct, Christine?
yes, that would be on the property of Burnham Circle. And I'm actually working on getting an easement from the developer on that.
Yeah, that looks like it's going to be on hitting 38 Whittemore.
Yes, it was. Yes.
So I would say, Mrs. Kraus, if you're having some issues with them doing stuff, you should talk to the developer.
Well, we
Yeah.
have talked to them.
Okay.
They were somewhat, they did some stuff, and they say they will repave the driveway, we'll see. Or
Okay.
a part of it.
Well, I can tell Mrs. Kraus that I drove up the hill the day that they were digging into your area, and I called the DPW because I was concerned because it was within that 4-foot right of way that the town actually has usage of, and to see whether they had received permission to dig in that area. And that area was hot topped right up into your driveway. And I'm not sure exactly where that went or what the response was, but they were going to send somebody up there. And I don't know if the town had sent a DPW employee came up to look at it, to talk to you about it, and to the gentleman that
After they
was.
dug. After they dug, they did.
Okay,
Well,
after they dug.
they dug, and my husband went out and talked to them. Not
Okay,
before.
I understand that, and that's why I called, because we hadn't seen any paperwork with respect to that, and because they usually give us a call. So we'll if anything happens again like that, I think you need to give us a call or give the DPW a call right away, so that way we can send someone up there and converse with the new developer and owner up there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. I know them, but they didn't know her last name, so sorry about that. Okay. All right, next. How are we doing for time? We okay?
We closed the public hearing and all that stuff?
Yeah, we can do that right now. Motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor?
Your eye.
Dave's eye.
Mitchell, aye.
Mignani, aye. That's 5-0. Okay, can we keep an eye on that? Because I think it's kind of important that everybody's keep watchful eye on what's going on over there. This looks like work is being done without other people's knowledge. Is that something we can do, Michael? And have the DPW aware of some of these things that is happening over there?
And
Yeah,
I would
we
think
actually-
planning.
We actually went and shut them down, I think, not too long ago, actually.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, there we go. Next on the agenda. We already did the consent agenda, so we're good with that.
So this is not a public hearing for sustainability. I think we can move right in, Joe.
We can go right into it. Okay, I was gonna introduce Ash, and if he's ready, we'd be more
I
than
am
happy.
ready. I'm more than ready. Everybody's favorite topic, net zero. So let's get onto it. I will need some guidance. I don't think I can share my screen, so I was hoping to have the presentation up. Michael, would you do that, or can someone give me access rights so I can do it?
Susan, do you have the ability to give Ash the ability to share screen? You'd have to make him a co-host, I believe. Actually, let me see if I can do that.
No, I can't.
No, Susan,
I
you
just
need
did
to
it.
do that. Okay,
I
thanks.
got it. Thank you. All right. So first off, thank you for the time and the attention. And I also want to thank the members of the Sustainability Committee, Matt Marquis, Chuck Litz, Rob Mullenbeek, who isn't a member anymore, but was extremely instrumental in getting this plan together, Margie, Margaret, Kara, Frank, and Kevin. I also wanted to acknowledge, even though Frank Nakashian's not on the town staff anymore, he has been extremely collaborative and instrumental in getting us to this stage. I also want to acknowledge that this slide deck that I sent you was somewhere in the range of 40 slides. We're not going to cover 40 slides, so you can all just calm down. It's going to be 7 slides, and hopefully we'll get through it fairly quickly. I do have a habit of speaking fast, so feel free to interrupt me if you feel like I'm going much too fast for you. I will try and modulate my speech. All right, so that's it. Let's get into it. We obviously passed, the town of Ashland passed a resolution to achieve net zero emissions by 2040 a couple of years back now. So last year did give us a little bit of a hit in our ability to produce a plan, but the next step of that was for us to start working on a plan. And as an initial step to get to the plan, we started with actually conducting a greenhouse gas inventory. A lot of the activities we've taken have been with a lot of input and collaboration with other groups, other towns. We've certainly taken pages from their playbooks in achieving this, and conducting an inventory was basically a best practice, because you really can't change what you can't measure if you don't have the data set to go after it. We had presented to you, Matt had presented to you in July 2020 on the findings of that inventory, and then we leveraged those inputs to start drafting a plan and developing the areas of focus. What we have developed is a plan, but as I'd mentioned to Michael when he attended our last sustainability committee meeting, on purpose, we've actually kept the plan a little bit more of a, I'd call it a scaffolding, because there are a lot of topics here that likely require engagement of key stakeholders, of experts, of people who are in some cases more knowledgeable than us. The Sustainability Committee is an extremely well-educated group and an extremely opinionated group, but we're not experts in everything that we are proposing. So we wanted to leave room in there for other stakeholders in the town and experts to come in and actually create the specificity in the plan, rather than us producing a plan that was too specific and then became too onerous for the town to adopt. So you'll notice that while we've identified specific strategies and we've tried to itemize those strategies into plans of action, we've tried to put some level of a timeline, which I think is critical to a plan. What we've chosen not to do is mandate anything or put very hard dates on stuff, right? We've tended to try and keep it broader, and that is by design. We also chose not to go down the path of producing a 100-page plan, as a number of our sister towns have done, because we didn't feel like that would be a living, breathing document. We felt like if we are to achieve something like net zero emissions by 2040, we needed the ability to be able to modify and evolve this document. So rather than producing a 100-page document that we would present and then nobody will ever read again, we chose to keep it as a PowerPoint presentation with broad outlines, with a ton of detail that goes behind it, that we're happy to engage with anyone who wants to go over them. And finally, I will recognize that a number of these strategies require action at the state level. A key example of that is the resolution that we also are hoping to propose in line with this plan as we present this plan to town meeting. And I'll talk about why that is so critical to do, in line with the plan. But it really just underscores the fact that as a town, we can take some actions, but this is a problem that's bigger than this town. And in a lot of cases, our action might in fact be advocating for action at the state and federal level. So that said, just a quick review of what the greenhouse gas emissions inventory had shown us. I'm not going to drain this topic. There are plenty of slides at the back that you can revisit that this was presented. But the key things I want you to take away from this. One, we're pretty much in line with other towns of our size and in our region at about 155 metric tons of CO2 emissions. These is equivalent gases. So you'll notice the letter E at the back. This covers not just carbon dioxide, which is oftentimes the most obvious gas that people think of, but also other gases like methane and natural gas, from pipelines and pipeline leakage that contribute to this number. And that really adds up to about 9 metric tons. It's a little hard to visualize that, but that's roughly the size of a 4,000 square foot house per person per year. So just to help you sort of think about how much emission that is, it's a pretty big number. The other key thing I want you to take away from this slide is really there are a few key areas for us. We are a residential town and a suburban town. So very obviously, the vast majority of our emissions come from residential buildings and commercial buildings. So those make up greater than 50% of our emissions. And then the next biggest category overall is transportation. So what you will notice is that the plan focuses on these areas very specifically. The municipal bar there is pretty low, it's about 2%. But it's an extremely critical area because it's how we can actually set standards. It's how we can actually show best practices. So it's really important for us to be leading in the municipal space so that the rest of the town can follow through. All right, so in terms of the plan itself, obviously the end goal is to achieve net zero emissions by 2040. You will notice we are very specific about the word equitable in here. The original resolution that we passed in town meeting also talked about social justice and equity. And we've been very conscious of that in trying to identify areas where equity is going to be a major key theme. As you look down from the goal, what we're really proposing is that every one of the stages that we basically go through 4 stages in every one of our strategies, right? So first is focused on education and setting and understanding baselines, kind of like the greenhouse gas inventory, right? Again, the goal is to ensure that we understand the numbers, that we have something to measure against. Otherwise, we don't know we're making progress or cannot identify areas where we need to make progress. Second, really focus on adaptation. This is really shifting the status quo through adjustments of attitude and behavior. It's us making personal choices, but is not typically requiring large investment, right? It's changing behavior sets, but you're not changing the playing field, so to speak. The next phase really then gets into investment. We're clearly not going to solve a problem like climate change or achieving net zero emissions by 2040 by just adaptation. It's an important first step. But you have to make investments. So municipal and personal capital investments will need to be made. And that starts changing effectively that playing field. It changes the matrix that you're playing in. And then you really get into the transformation where you really start looking at long-term planning and long-term change. The next set of boxes below are really the areas that we need to focus on, right? So the 5 areas that we've chosen to center our plan around are the energy supply, clearly. We're talking about net zero emissions. So energy is what creates the emissions. So that has to be addressed upfront. Buildings and homes, based on that in greenhouse gas inventory graphic that I showed you. Transportation, how we get around. Actions that we have to take both as a municipality, but also as a state, and advocacy that we might need to do outside of that, outside of the region as well. And then achieving net zero is really a balance. It's kind of think about it as a seesaw where on one end we have to think about reducing our usage of fossil fuels so that we are reducing the emissions, but there is no way that we could sustainably achieve zero emissions, right? That's not a realistic goal to set for anyone. So the offset for that is the sinking of carbon, of absorption of carbon. And that's really what the environment piece of this box covers. That's really the best known, in current state, the best known source of carbon sink that we have, trees and open spaces. So that becomes an extremely critical counterbalance, right? So we have to do a lot in the first 4 boxes, and then we have to significantly increase what we do in the last box. And that's how we would achieve parity. I'll pause there, see if you have any immediate questions. Otherwise, I'll keep going. So far, so good.
Yeah, I just had kind of procedural. So just to be clear, Ash, you and the Sustainability Committee are asking for 2 items at town meeting. The resolution and the adoption of this plan. Is that correct?
We are not looking for you to adopt the plan. So let me clarify that, Rob. We were given the task of coming up with the plan. I think the plan itself requires, further input personally. So what we would want to do is propose the plan, is to meet that first bar of having come up with the plan and present that plan. And in line with that plan presentation, actually propose the resolution. So that's really how I would think about it.
I see. So you're talking about proposing this or not presenting this at town meeting,
That
and
is
then the ask is going to be the resolution.
The resolution. That is correct. Thank you, Rob. That's
Okay.
exactly right. That fair?
I did have another comment if
Please.
someone else did. So yeah, I think this looks very good, very well written. One thing I would note, you did talk, I think, pretty effectively about carbon sinks and tree protection, but I don't think you actually talked about the role of open space.
We do actually. I just have it in a bigger box. So as I show you,
Yeah,
the
I took
actually
a quick
gets into
look,
the
and
plan.
I did have a question because you talked about, I think, green zoning. But I don't recall, and I could have missed it, but any strong language about either acquiring or protecting open space as opposed to, say, a tree bylaw, which to me may also be good, but as you know, in some ways, if you're doing a comprehensive plan and you're looking at something like this and you want to protect the environment, part of what you want to talk about is an open space protection and acquisition, or at
You're
least
spot on.
talk about that in a way that makes it clear that that's also a strong part of the plan. I just didn't see that, and I could have missed it, but I would
No,
say,
you didn't miss it. I sent you guys in a last minute rush last night because I didn't realize that we were scheduled for this meeting. I sent you a version that was a little bit older.
So
It was one click
yeah.
lower. So
So
what
the
you will
only
see
thing I
today
would
is that I've
suggest-
actually already channeled you,
Sure.
and there
The
is
only thing I
formal
would
language.
suggest is the committee, think about that part, because we need to do some kind of comprehensive planning and open space plan. And
Totally.
the select board is looking at that. So if that's an important part of the plan, just be clear about it.
Yeah, so the next slide actually will make it clear. The
Okay.
next two slides will actually hopefully address it. It's in broader language still, but certainly that input is great. Thanks.
Sure.
That's very valid. Joe, you had a question?
I was just going to ask with respect to the education aspect of it. Is there any potential going into the schools or talking to the school committee about bringing these programs into a science forum for kids? Because it's you want to get them early on in age to get them thinking that way instead of waiting until they're in their mid-20s or whatever, and
That's right.
they're not used to the net zero sustainability aspect of it. So I was just kind of curious.
It's about language change, attitude change, and we strongly believe that when kids learn something and they adopt something, they get their parents to change and adopt something as well, because I think that influence happens. You
Right.
are absolutely right. The Sustainability Committee today does work in a very patchy way, to be candid, because we've been very focused on developing the plan with members of the school science program. We've worked previously with the Eco Club that they have in school. We've engaged off and on. I think it will need to be a pretty critical part of the education side of this, Joe. You are right. And in fact, I think even as setting of a good practice, I think having the school have a more reasonable stance on the ability to do recycling. Today some of those aspects are missing. Do composting. I think there's been interest in that, but we haven't quite gotten there. Frank was starting to work on that. There are certain areas of immediate low-hanging fruit that we could go after that would just demonstrate this in a very real way. All right, interest of time, I'm going to keep us moving because some of what you will ask likely gets this thing. So this is actually, and Brandy had sent me some feedback saying, that graphic that I've been showing, that the Sustainability Committee has been showing at farmers markets and some of the other forums, we actually converted that into a 2-slider. This is sort of the very broad strokes of the plan and the level that I'll get into in this meeting. The remaining pages that we won't be covering actually get into far more detail. But just starting on energy supply, one of the first things that we would suggest is that we need to pursue 100% carbon-free electricity in our aggregation. Here, you'll notice we've used Harvey balls, but today we actually have a fairly robust aggregation plan that does use renewable energy. But the improvement we'd like to see on it is for us to adopt effectively tier 1 RECs. Now that has to be balanced because tier 1 RECs are more expensive. And just for those of you who don't know the difference between tier 1 and tier 3 RECs, they're all coming from renewable sources. Tier 3 RECs were largely created based on Texas wind energy, and in some cases are seen as a way of greenwashing, which, you know, the concept of RECs was a way of applying some kind of a carbon penalty to really encourage the growth of fossil fuel electricity within the region. Tier 3 RECs somewhat undermines that goal. Tier 1 RECs require the energy to be produced in region, so within the New England and Massachusetts area. And we believe that local energy production is actually quite important. They do tend to be more expensive. So we'd have to balance that. So this is where that balancing act has to come in. A lot of input, Steve, has to come in, you know, as we think about these and instrument these into actual policy and plan statements. We'd have to be thoughtful about how we instrument that, right? Is there an offset of some kind? Like, that's where we haven't taken it to that level. The second portion of this then looks at eliminating the dependence on fossil fuel-based energy. And this is directly supported by the resolution that we want to propose, but I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get to it. Maximizing then the production of green energy locally. And we believe that this is critically important. Ashland has potential. We have been taking advantage of that potential, but I think there is more potential. If we had a solar panel on every roof, every brownfield space that we had, I think it leads to a better brand for the town, but also leads to you know, healthy economic activity for the town as well. As we move past energy supply, one other thing that I'll call out is, in most cases, lower income communities, social justice communities, people who are renting or in condos oftentimes don't have access to be able to put a solar panel, for example, on their roofs. They don't own their roofs. Condo communities are in that same thing. Having the aggregation plan effectively be 100% carbon free really gets past that big blocker, right? So that's why this is really, really important. The second piece really then gets into homes and buildings. And you will notice a key theme here. A lot of the plan focuses on electrification as a primary means, and this is by design. There is no pathway to net zero emissions if we continue to use fossil fuels at the rate that we use them today. Even the state has acknowledged that. And so the state, for example, suggests that we have to drop down our fossil fuel consumption by somewhere in the range of 80%. And the only clear pathway towards net zero really is electrification. So as we look at our homes and buildings, which are indeed our largest contributor, you know, they really start focusing on programs that can help lower emissions in that space. The first one is something that other towns have adopted already. Certainly cities have. So Cambridge and Boston have both done it. Newton's looking at this very, very closely, is requiring large buildings to start to report and reduce energy usage. It's a two-phase thing. First, again, going back to that education portion, is building a baseline of how each building is consuming energy, what that emission is. And then once we get good data, really shifting the logic so that they can start reducing energy use. Having that data allows the business owner, the town, to build better use cases and better business cases around the offsets that would be generated by reducing that energy use, right? It creates that value proposition for them. Second, then looks at homeowners. You know, obviously large buildings typically would be commercial, but this is around creating programs to help homeowners reduce energy use. And this is two-phased. One is requiring electrification of new buildings. So now this is indeed what that resolution gets at the heart of. We can't do it on our own. We don't have the legal structure in Massachusetts to basically just ban natural gas. Belmont has tried that. It has failed. We could apply for a home rule petition, but I think it's a step much further than we'd be willing to take. So what we're effectively asking is for the state to live up to its own legal mandates and pass the laws that are already sitting in the Senate and the House to effectively require that new buildings start getting decarbonized, and to also align state bodies towards this goal of decarbonization. So for example, the Board of Buildings. And then affirms that we on our own then would take advantage of those laws, the ability to pass those things, to take thoughtful and measured approaches in addressing that problem. Again, we have choices still, but it would be thoughtful and measured. And then the final portion of the resolution really looks at social justice. The last four, whereas is effectively talk about ensuring that those communities are protected and that the benefits that accrue from this really flow downwards to them and are effectively equitably distributed. So requiring that electrification of new buildings is also important, because if you think about our timeline, 2040 for us, 2050 for the state, any new building that's built today is going to be around in 2040 or 2050, or frankly, it's sucked. If it wasn't built right, it's going to be around, frankly, much longer than that. So it's stuck effectively. It's stuck on an island. And so if we have to achieve that goal, we really need to start requiring that electrification now, so that those things are built now. Steve, I think you had mentioned in a previous select board meeting, it is ridiculously expensive to try and retrofit this stuff after the fact, as today's technology stands. But building it in upfront isn't. And so that's why this is the sensible sort of approach that we would propose.
That's a good point, Ash, because you're right. If you build a house today and you put let's say a natural gas burning furnace in, that furnace is going to last 30, 40 years. So
yeah,
absolutely right. So,
and at some stage will have to be retrofitted and then converted to electrification, because that will be now the new law. So let's just get ahead of this curve a little bit.
I have a couple of questions at this point.
Sure.
Related to buildings in particular. Where do you see the net zero building codes coming from? The stretch code was something that the state initiated when they created the Green Communities Act. And so do you see it going the same way? I think there's things that we can do locally, but I think the meat and potatoes seem to be at the state level, which
yes,
was indicated earlier.
As it relates to this topic, you're spot on.
Yeah, and then a follow-up question to that is, where do you see the planning board fitting into this whole mix? Because certainly they have the ability to begin to condition permits.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. So as you look at the details of the plan, actually it calls out exactly those elements, Steve. And you're right. There are a couple of problems. One, we don't have the ability to just whole house just go on and put a stretch code ourselves, right? We have some limited capabilities that the planning board can actually instrument. And frankly, I'd rather have a detailed conversation with the planning board to start identifying those elements rather than having a sustainability team just go out there and mandate it. Again, that's one of the structures of this program, of this plan. But the real change does have to come at the state level. On our own, we've tried to do advocacy. We signed up on the ICC site to influence how building codes would be structured, right? We've been sending out letters and engaging other groups. And in fact, as there's a coalition of towns starting to form now, Steve, where we've now started to partner with Framingham and Natick and Holliston, especially those three towns, but also starting to have conversations with Westboro on a regional coalition. The energy and solar challenge that's going on right now, right? That I would highly encourage residents to take advantage of, is the result of a coalition like that, and we see that coalition growing. But that actually is designed because if we take action on our own, there is a potential that a builder might look at that and kind of go, I'm going to go to Natick or I'm going to go to Holliston, right? But if we attack this problem as a region, right? There is no option, right? If you want to be in Metro West, that's the plan, right? And that's the policy. So that's one clear objective. Second, the current structure is very confusing because if the state took that action, we're done. We don't have to deal with all these weird, motions and workarounds. So we really, this is where again, the resolution calls for that building board, to get in line to really start building policies that are in line with the state's requirement, so that we don't have to do this kludge on our side and create a patchwork of rules that only get us maybe 20% there. We really need to get to the 100%. And then there are already active activities happening around a far bigger actual net zero building code, right? And as a green community, we have the option to adopt that early. I would hope that Ashland, given the kind of leadership we've already shown in sustainability, we would do it. But again, that has to be established at the state level. So you're spot on there. I think on the municipal building side, we put a blank there, but in reality, we really debated because I think we've taken some meaningful action, right? But those buildings are not online yet, right? So that's why we kind of gave ourselves the white box, But I think we've got some good momentum there in terms of the school building, the public safety building. The key thing I think, and you'll see this on sort of the takeaway slide, is I think really making sustainability not the second or the third or the fourth consideration, but making it as much of a consideration as any of the other big things as financials. Because I think as a number of you will recognize with the work that happened, for example, with the public safety building, having sustainability sort of engage a little later on that meant a lot more rework versus on the school building side where we were engaged upfront and early, and that's on us as much as anybody else, frankly. I think we had a smoother process. I'd like the sustainability committee, if this is going to be a charter, this is going to become a big deal for us to be front and center on a number of those conversations and actually being in that leadership position to set that tone up front so that it's not an afterthought, right? Again, retrofitting is much, much harder than building, with that plan upfront. I'm conscious of time, so unless you have some major,
just
please.
A quick, so as we deal with some of these, like I'll take 1050 Main Street as an example, and also Chestnut Street, we've got some large developments going on. Are there particular tools that are available now other than, well, I mean, I suppose the big thing would be to talk to the developers about this sort of thing and what their plans are, but are there particular tools that we should adopt now or use now in terms of, because people are building right now,
Yeah, I agree, Rob.
United Group of Companies build an apartment building, we got all sorts of stuff going on.
So candidly, we don't have a tool available right now, but one of the members, Kara, has this as her very next action. So at our next sustainability committee meeting, we're actually going to start reviewing what's the structure of an engagement with a building project like Chestnut Street or even the Y look like. What should sustainability?
The Y, that's another example. Yeah.
That's huge. So Tricia Kendall, we had a quick meeting with her early on, and she actually suggested, why don't you start reaching out to the Y now? Like, why wait for other action or other authority that might be handed to you or may take time to be handed to you?
Reaching out to developers, is that what you?
Reach out to the directors at the Y, because she had that engagement and she basically introduced us. But it's still based on hey, maybe you should talk to sustainability rather than you have to talk to sustainability. I think that changes the way we approach it.
I'm thinking about institutional systems in place that would,
agree,
whether or not, whatever the tool is, that it makes sure it's part of the process, as opposed to someone talking to the directors of the Y, which we all hope. I did that when I had an interview with them.
Yeah, but it has no weight.
But that's not a system. That's
And so our next step actually is to focus on this exact question of what should that structure look like. Kara has started to develop a body of knowledge around it. And so hopefully we can come back to you with something more refined. And then as a follow through on this, Tricia and me have agreed that in the November, December timeframe, we'll actually start engaging the planning board directly as well, and maybe having some collaboration sessions that can help us refine this thinking a little bit more.
Because one of the reasons, sorry to interrupt, but one of the reasons, because we're not putting in the formal net zero plan, so we don't have these formal processes. So I guess I would just point that out. As long as we're not actually implementing a formal plan or procedure, that's a weakness. That's all. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I'd love to continue to get guidance from each one of you. Right, I am a novice when it comes to municipal planning. I think I have a lot more thought process around sustainability. So This is where your guidance would be super useful. How should we approach that, right? I think that would be a great next step. And Michael, maybe you can give us some guidance, like you're the champ on that. All right. So just moving on. This is the next page. And Brandy, if you remember, there was a big chart. Frankly, actually, I have a request up front. We'd love to actually bring that chart into the town hall. And if it's actually okay, we actually put it in a prominent location, right? It sort of encapsulates this, allows people to sort of interact with it. We did that at the library very recently and it was well received. But I'll put that picture out there anyway. But how we get around. So once we get past buildings, now it's about transportation, right? We are a suburban town. We drive. We have to drive. Our town's set up to drive still. If I have to go to the grocery store, my nearest grocery store is 6.5 miles away. back from where I originally come from in Mumbai, that would be 14 kilometers roughly, and it would take me 3 hours to get there. But here, it's my next door grocery, right? But you have to drive. There is no choice in the matter. So what we're really thinking about here is refining the way we think about town. This is about long-term planning as much as anything else, but it's around maximizing walking, biking, public transportation options. It's about creating the kind of investments we've already been doing on things like the trail, right? The Trolleywood Trail or others. Being thoughtful about, as we develop 126 or 135, that there is space for people to walk and drive. I think that has been happening. It's really taking this to the next level. So we did give ourselves a little bit of a credit on that one, but I think a lot more needs to happen in that space. Most importantly, on that public transportation side of the picture, right? How do we enable some form of public transportation, right? I don't know what the answer there is. Again, would love for greater engagement, but clearly needs to happen. And then the second piece is, if we can't get away from cars, then we effectively have to transition to electric. Good news, 3 years back, if I'd made this suggestion, I think every one of you would have looked at me and said, yeah, not everybody drives a Tesla, Ash, whatever, right? It's not gonna happen. The good news is pretty much every major producer, manufacturer of vehicles has now committed to change their fleet to electric. So on our part now, if that's already happening, that momentum's already there, feels far more approachable, if not achievable. Our goal now becomes around advancing that vehicle infrastructure. We've got a few key areas where we put electric charging stations, but this is not just about public charging stations. It's about requiring a condo community or the next large development to effectively make that parking lots have charging points in them, right? It's mandating smart parking lots. It's about requiring, if you've got a minimum number of parking spaces, that some of them just have to have it. Putting some lines in there already, the kind of conduit conversation you guys just had before this, right? And then really targeting 100% conversion to electric vehicles. The biggest sort of blocker to that isn't cost, because in the long run, electric vehicles are shown to be actually efficient. It is around that charging infrastructure. So that's something we have to lead on. And again, planning board, the select board, the town has to play a pretty active role in that. And again, it's some of that same conversation, Steve, we were having around developments earlier. And then again, I think we gave ourselves more marks here. I think we've taken some meaningful steps on the municipal fleet. One big area would be, as we look at our school bus contract that comes up next, right, whenever that is really pushing for that to be electric, right? Because that's the most visible. And Joe, you talked about having that first impression at the school level. What better way than that's how the kids get taken to school, right? It's so visible. So that's around transportation. And then we get into an area where we felt the least qualified. So we've put some things out there. This is about changing zoning. This is some of the local, things, Steve. It's around having a thoughtful look at things like easements for, what do they call them? Chuck, I'm going to need help here. I'm missing the word. I knew I was going to miss a word somewhere. For heat pumps, we need either Matt or Chuck. You guys are going to have to help me. Or what's
Geothermal?
Not geothermal. The thingy that hangs off the wall and causes us to not be able to meet our easement thing. I cannot believe I've gone blank.
Eversource.
No.
It's like playing charades.
All right, everybody's trying to help me, and I can't. Matt, when we put, let's say, either geothermal heating or something, we have to have something on the side of the house that might actually.
Converters.
Say that again.
Converters.
Any of that equipment, right?
Yeah.
Having that not be part of like the minimum boundary that we need to have between houses, right? It's stuff like that, right? Is being conscious that when we have a rule that says you have to have this much space between houses, if there is something that supports clean energy, right? Maybe easing that restriction a little bit, and then that word will come to me right after this meeting. But either way, I think you get my point. Hopefully you did. And then advocating for adopting net zero codes, which again, the resolution goes right back to, right? This is why that resolution is important. Enacting green zoning bylaws. Brandy, I believe that you've recently done a lot of work around social justice sort of zoning, but really marrying that concept with green zoning now, being thoughtful about how we not just build for, in a city environment, it would be density, but in our environment, it really needs to be like what works for suburbia, what works for Ashland in terms of how we develop our zoning bylaws so that there is green space and yet the ability to sort of support our larger town goals. And that's where we get into the strategic town planning. As you can tell, a topic that I'm least qualified to talk about. And then environment, right? So yes, on this page, Rob, we haven't quite called it, but I actually chose to use the words development process tree bylaw because that's almost like a next step. But this topic actually, when you get into the plan piece of it, actually addresses public spaces, open spaces, waterways, and really looks at it more from a natural resource perspective, right? So it's on page, I think it's slide 15 or 17 on this deck really is where this plan is documented. So that does actually have a much wider sort of language behind it. All right, that's the plan, right? The 5 main areas with some key attributes. What I'll call out is before I actually close and open it up, the rest of the detailed planning recommendation, this is what we'd want to take back to individual stakeholders and actually engage with them in detail on, really takes those individual areas and I'll just give you a sample for it, right? Actually starts documenting not just the 3 points that I made earlier, but within that, individual bullet points of things that we ought to do, right? And just because I couldn't remember, since Rob brought it up, I'm actually just going to go to environment. That tree bylaw section actually is called preserve and protect natural resources, including open space, wooded areas, and water resources. Frankly, to try and get you guys into 2 slides, that was going over. So I chose to focus on the one piece that we would do in the very next, but really would look at natural resources that are much beyond just what we have right now and really would develop, things like town forest further and open space community. So what you'll see, I'm just sampling this for you right now is, one, there's more detail behind those individual line items. We've also attempted to identify to the best of our ability right now, the key stakeholders that we need to either work with or who would be instrumental in implementing, defining and implementing the actual, policy statements and the plan statements. And then we've obviously maintained that timeline view of this. And before I let you have your questions in, I will just maybe call out a few areas that we do need you as select board members and as leaders to really be focusing on, right? So we talked about, Michael, I think we had this conversation requiring town staff to view all actions and decisions through that lens of sustainability. Really focusing on that as an imperative and making it a priority. There are a number of priorities you need to deal with, and I think you've given us a few great examples in the conversation we had. Encouraging the formation of project teams, right? So this is where we'd like to take these thoughts, this scaffolding and fill it further, actually put the right items on that scaffolding. And I think that would require work beyond the 6 members on the sustainability committee and their volunteer time. It really requires experts to get into the detail and the nuts and bolts of the plan, which is one of the reasons why, Rob, I kind of hesitate to just present this as a plan. I think there's enough meat here for us to present it at a town meeting, but to call it the full plan, I felt was disingenuous. And then, we have to continue to advocate for net zero. We would like you to support the resolution to call for state action on building decarbonization. That's an essential first step. We can't really do much of anything else if some of those things don't happen. So I think it's ridiculously important. Inviting or creating the framework for the sustainability committee to review major warrants, sort of like what the finance committee does. And we don't feel we are overreaching. We think this is really, really important to do now. The tree bylaw was something that we started working on last year. It didn't quite get far enough. And eventually we chose not to present it. So we'd like to actually start working on that again and actually would like you to support that passage, in one of the future town meetings. And then promoting in the incentivization of tier 1 recs. Michael, I'm hoping that we get permission to use those tier 1 recs and our aggregation plan gets reviewed and finally approved. I hope that's happening. And as we get the resolution through, really start focusing on an electrification bylaw that makes it more specific to our town. That, Steve, that's when we really start having to think about how are we going to offset some of these things, right? We'd like to start working on that element and be able to present that to the town as well. And then finally, it's not on the page. Please get us back a sustainability coordinator, because there's no way we're going to function without him or her. So make that a high priority. That role's critical. We can't do this in 3-hour meetings every 2 weeks. This doesn't work that way, right? So we're going to have to make that down investment on it. I have a bunch of next steps. You're welcome to read them. I'm going to pause here. I feel like I've been doing a lot of talking, and I want to give you guys the chance to hit me with questions.
I'll open it up to the board if you have any additional questions for Ash during this great presentation.
Joe, do you mind if I jump in?
Go right ahead, Brandy.
Okay, so first of all, thank you guys. This is a great presentation, and I went through all the backup slides as well,
Awesome.
Looking at all the detail. And you guys have put in just a tremendous amount of work, so thank you so much for all the all the thought and all the. I know you have a lot of data to go through as well, so it's great to get it to this point. So my question or comment on the different sections of this, the plan that you're going to plan to present to the town meeting, is there something you can put in as far as action items for residents to be able to do today? Because as I'm reading these high level bullet points, it reads to me like the residents are going to say, oh, okay, this is good. I'm just going to wait until somebody tells me what I should do. But there are things that residents can do now to kind of take steps to make changes in moving towards net zero. So whether it's things like the composting program to eliminate waste, or the solar and clean heat challenge, where there's incentives to move to ground source heat pumps, or whatever it is, or even highlighting where folks can have plug in their electric vehicles in town and be able to invest in more zero emissions vehicles. So I'm just thinking of ways that it can kind of have some action items for residents as well, because I think that's one thing that I think would help the presentation to town meeting. So
that's great feedback, Brandy. We actually have ready material. We actually do this when we are at Farmers Market. In fact, I think you've seen one of our handouts. We do this we did this with the library recently as well, where we handed out the flip side. So we actually created a flyer that has this plan, and on the flip side effectively is the what can residents do. And I think that's great feedback. I could certainly close on that rather than a more detailed presentation that I did for you guys. I'd probably want to make this a 3 or 4 page. I don't think we have enough time in town meeting for it to be that detailed. Point them to the right resources, obviously online, post this, and then close on that as our note, right? I think that might be very, very effective, and we can certainly produce the handouts as well. We hesitate sometimes to just print on paper because that feels wrong for a sustainability committee to do, but in some cases, I guess it's actually required and maybe important. So that's great feedback. Totally will take that on.
Thank you, Brandy. Steve, go ahead.
Good. Thank you, Ash, and thank you to the Sustainability Committee. And I just wanted to make note of Rob Moonbeek. I know he's on the call tonight, and a former member of the committee, and I want to thank Rob as well. Just piggybacking on Brandy's comment, I personally find the whole solar environment totally confusing. And we must get 5 phone calls a day from solar companies. We get emails left and right. There's different programs. There's these programs. There's this. Maybe some kind of presentation, to inform residents about how to maneuver through this landscape of solar programs. And I have my home has got the perfect situation
Orientation.
for solar. Perfect. And, you know, at this stage of the game, I don't know if it makes sense for me personally or not to invest in solar, but again, I find it very, very confusing. So that's one question / request. The other thing is, the other comment or question I have is, where do you feel the federal government, their role in all of this at this point in time? Now, you know, I think clearly we're going to depend more on the state in terms of being progressive with climate programs. But, you know, it seems now we're you know, climate at the federal level is mired in politics.
It is, Steve. One, I'd like to maybe address your comments. Rob is a former member of the Sustainability Committee, but yet he's a full member of the committee. Unofficially, I'm not letting him go. He's fully active and stays active. And I've told him up front when he decided to not renew. Yeah, sorry, buddy, you're staying. In fact, Rob's actually supporting the gap, a little bit of the gap that Frank left by actually continuing to engage on the solar and heat challenge, which actually goes directly to the point you made, Steve. Solar, and even more so than solar, ground source and air source heat is extremely confusing, even for someone who's educated about the topic as I am. And actually the intent behind the program, and again, for residents that may either listen to this or are listening to this, and I highly encourage you to go check that program out. There's a really robust website around it. But our goal as a group of towns was to, one, identify strong quality vendors that could actually do the work, certify the work. We pre-negotiated the rates, or rather Frank and a number of sustainability coordinators across the region pre-negotiated the rates, right? So part of the goal was to simplify. There's also the extension of that program is in the future, we actually want to continue to collaborate as a group of towns to simplify exactly these topics and present valuable resources, access to maybe guides, you know, who've done this before, so that people can get their questions answered. So I think that's a spot on sort of really, really smart sort of piece of feedback for us, Steve. On the federal government piece of your question, you're going to make me cry. I had genuine hopes that we finally might have a climate plan. Clearly, Mr. Manchin felt otherwise. So we'll leave that as far as we'll go there. I don't think my comments are going to be polite enough for this meeting if I were to continue down that path. I despair sometimes. Let's just leave it there. And so it's actually even more important for us at the local, municipal and state level to actually be on the front foot on this and actually take action on. These are things we can do. Waiting for the federal government to get its act together, I worry it'll be 2040 and we'll still be having this conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, Ash.
Thank you, Steve. Great, Yolanda.
Well, thank you, Ash, for this great presentation. And thank you for all the extra information that was in our packet, because I read through it once. I know I'm going to have to go through it again because it's just so informative. I just want to piggyback on a couple things. You know, what Brandy was saying about how can we get some more information to the people as to what they can be doing now, because this is great information, but there's no steps, as she said. Mm-hmm. And as you said, to try and even present what you presented here at town meeting would be very difficult. I think what I would recommend is, and I know you're not looking to get this passed at this town meeting, is to have your own forums and have multiple and go through this information so that the public can ask specific questions and they can, as you said, you're looking for more feedback. Your committee and the people that you involved in this have done an amazing amount of work. And I'm sure you've pulled some in as you've talked to people at the farmers market, but to really get the feel of where the community is at, you want to do a session where you're talking through this and you're getting their questions and their feedback and how much buy-in you can get us to some of these things by 2030 and by 2040. Some of the information I looked at, you know, that talked about the number of homes that are using natural gas. That's a huge amount. And And, as Steve was saying, for him, does it make sense for him to make any kinds of energy changes to his home? Because he doesn't, does he want to put that investment into it? And I think a lot of people are at that, but can we then have that discussion?
Totally.
The other thing is definitely use MAPC, and they are about to release their Metro Common 2050, which is their regional plan for the 101 cities and towns that they manage. And there's a big portion about sustainability. And there are actually some action steps in there. So I don't know if you've had a chance to go look at that. It's getting officially approved next week at their winter conference. But that's a great resource as well. But this was just a lot of information. And I think to try and do this and get feedback and get input, I don't know that town meeting's the right place for you.
I agree, Yolanda. I think one of our, as with a number of things, COVID really played a number on our schedule here, because I think this kind of an engagement, we had some good momentum with some forums that we had started, back a year and a half, 2 years now. It's only now that we actually were able to start getting back out in front of people. And honestly, we've tried approaching it from a Zoom perspective, and the participation levels are just not there. We would love to go out. I have held off on approaching other committees, other groups in the town till we had this presentation. That is absolutely the very next step that we will be taking, starting to engage those stakeholders. As regards to MAPC, this plan is materially built on best practices that they developed with NATIC, they developed with us. Our next Sustainability Committee meeting on the 25th is actually an engagement with MAPC and the Framingham Sustainability Committee, which is recently formed and actually is taking some guidance from us on how to sort of focus their attention a little bit, but is focusing on a program on evaluating the effectiveness of some of these strategies that MAPC themselves has been presenting. So we'll actually be on the front foot of that. We are actually the pilot for that. And we continue to have a very healthy and robust engagement with them. But it's not just the MAPC. We have active engagement with the Rocky Mountain Institute, which actually gave us a lot of the inputs on how to craft the resolution we presented, with a number of 350.org. Like, we have a number of organizations, Sierra Club, that we individually and collectively actively engage with and use them to educate ourselves. We're not the first ones. We're not the only ones doing this. This is now not something that needs to be carved out, as a snowflake sort of exercise. There's a lot of best practice behind this now. And that's being proven out. But those are great comments, Yolanda. We'll have to come, maybe have you host us, and maybe we can have a conversation around sustainability on one of your programs.
Well, that would be great. Definitely. The other thing is, not only do you have MAPC, the Region 101, but you have their sub-regions. And Ashland is part of the Metro West Regional Collaborative. And there's a lot of discussion there. And I think you've popped in on some of those meetings.
I have.
About how we can work regionally. And that's certainly right. As we look at sustainability and possibly creating new bylaws, whether they be zoning or whatever, I'm sure that the other members, and it's a planning board member and a select board member from each of the 9 communities, would love to have that discussion. And so we have a meeting next week, and I will let people know where we're at with our net zero plan. And it could be that we could try to coordinate something with, the sustainability committees of all the communities that are involved.
That would be brilliant.
Holliston has their sustainability coordinator that I believe they're currently sharing with Sherborne.
That's right.
And so certainly that regional discussion of sustainability, I could help foster that if you're interested, and let me know when.
Interested. We would love the engagement.
Okay.
We would love the guidance and the opportunity. That's critical. It's absolutely critical.
Okay.
Thank you, Yolanda.
Yeah.
Mike, is there anything that you would like to comment on? A question? Are you good?
Yeah, I think the only question I had is, Ash, one of the things that Frank was working on was the sustainability section of the townwide strategic plan. And I don't know if he had an opportunity to share that with the sustainability committee, if he worked with the sustainability to craft that. If not, that's something I think, I would like to have some input on.
Yeah, would love to provide input. We've had conversations about it, but frankly, it wasn't at the level of maturity yet. He was still drafting. So obviously Frank was extremely active with the sustainability committee, attended every meeting. Oftentimes was the one who was implementing the ideas, right? Because that was his job. So that's why it's really critical that we get someone whose job it is to do sustainability back in the town. But happy to engage with you, Michael, and provide input there. In fact, we'd want to.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you,
Mr.
Michael.
Chair,
Ash,
I just had a question. If
go ahead, Rob.
so Ash, so the resolution.
Yes,
So
sir.
you're not right. So I think most of us had a chance to read it. Are you going to talk about how that relates, or you think that's pretty obvious at this point? And what's your strategy for town meeting for that? Are you?
Yeah. I can certainly talk to it. If you still have questions, I made an attempt. I wasn't sure how much time I was going to have to try and.
Yeah. All
relay
right. I'm
some of
not
the
sure I'm
concerns up front,
advocating
right?
for that. If other members want you to go through it, I'm in favor of it. I don't know if other people have questions or if there's a process where we should resolve any questions about it. At some point, I presume we're going to approve to put this on the warrant, which is
That was going to be my
mind,
question,
approved.
Rob.
Yeah.
Was
Okay.
based on this, do you still have questions, and are we in a good
All right, I
position to
see.
put that on the warrant?
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions. What I will say, and I said this before, just to sort of reinforce the points that I made both in the email I sent you, as well as in the commentary I provided. As you look at the entire body of knowledge that is known about achieving net zero goals, there is no question anywhere that electrification is a required step, and the reduction of fossil fuels is a required step. There's no pathway to net zero without it. And the resolution specifically focuses on the element that we can't control, right? It's requiring the state to take action on something that they're supposed to take action. So it's partly symbolic, but it also puts pressure on the state government to actually go ahead and do it. More importantly, it requires that the Board of Buildings, the DPU, take specific actions that they ought to be taking anyway and align their policies towards that decarbonization goal. And I think it's important for towns like Ashland to step up and kind of put that pressure on those bodies. I think advocacy works in that manner. The second piece is, at some level, I think we need the ability to be able to set our own agenda. There are good laws that are in both the Senate and the House right now, and the resolution supports the passage of those. So it's a register. And then just as the original net zero resolution that the town passed, it was non-binding, I think it is an important first step because it changes the conversation. I suspect that if that resolution hadn't been passed, the engagement we had, for example, with the school building would probably still have happened, wouldn't have happened in quite that robust fashion. So it's an important signal that this is important and allows us to start engaging. We do it anyway, but allows us to really start engaging with town permission at some level on really making it harder for new buildings to be developed with no electrification plan. That's the bit that's truly critical. And then the final piece, that component around social justice is so important. And I think, again, it pushes and reaffirms that commitment that we have. Again, some people might call that symbolic. I personally feel that it has to be a central tenet. These are founding documents in my mind. They set policy, they set strategy. So I'll pause there. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ash.
So I actually have one more comment. Ash made me think of it when he talked about
Go right ahead.
how sustainability was involved right away from the schools, not public safety. And I think, sorry, 1 second. With how certain things went down with the Mendez building and certain things with public safety and other projects here in town, I think I'd like us to look at, and I know I mentioned something to Michael about this, that when we're doing new projects, we bring in all the committees that could somehow have impact or input or information that would inform and help us plan the project. Because I think some of the missteps or some of the hiccups or some of the things that we've seen in the most, recent projects, as well as in other projects, if we had all these committees pulled together initially, and they don't have to stay involved the whole time. I just think that would be something that as a town would make some of our projects better. And I'd like to advocate that and see how we do that.
Joe, if I could just comment on Yolanda's comment here.
Sure.
Yolanda, this is something that that I actually advocated for a number of years ago, and we actually initiated a kind of a liaison concept to projects and so on. The idea of having the sustainability committee or coordinator involved makes total sense. But the challenge has been is that there's a concept of staying in your own lane. So the select board stays here, the planning board stays here, and that never made sense to me at all. That we don't have some kind of coordinated effort to approach and discuss a major project. And just to a little bit further, the public safety building actually considered the geothermal right from the beginning. It was always part of the list of potential HVAC systems. I really need to give credit to a number of the sustainability committees, Nat Marshquist, Chuck Lids, for really getting involved. When we got to that stage of discussions about the HVAC system, they were instrumental, I think, in really kind of framing and working through that discussion. So just a little bit of clarity on that process.
Thank you, Steve. That was going to be one of my final comments, but you phrased it very nicely and short and sweet. And with respect to getting everybody together, we had that discussion many months ago, and it was similar to like a tech review committee, but involving, the sustainability group and other committees that should be right from the beginning stages, but maybe not through the entire stage, the process of a project, but maybe in the early stages to get things started and moving along. Ash, thank you so much for your presentation. And I think that hopefully you got out of some of the questions and comments that were made by the board tonight and others that, a public forum is probably one way to go to get this information out to people using the MAPC platform and their guidance. We just had one very recently with the inclusionary zoning rule discussion. And, right from the get-go, they were doing surveys with the people who were doing, that were part of this presentation and discussion. So you're getting that information firsthand right there that evening. So maybe that would be a great forum for you to entertain and use. And I know Yolanda would probably get that all, squared away, but they're a good tool to have in your box if need be.
I was just saying, Joe, can I ask one quick question on the resolution
Sure.
before we move on?
Sure.
So, Ash, I know that the resolution that was drafted that we want to bring to town meeting in isolation, it probably has limited effect on the state. Regionally, are there other communities that have approved this resolution? Are there others that are going to?
They're working on it. So different communities are taking different strategies towards the same problem. And again, the RMI actually has a collective group that Chuck and Matt have been actively part of that helped us draft this. Belmont is one other town that's actually adopting a very similar resolution or proposing a very similar resolution. I think we've got at least 2 or 3 other towns that are Arlington and I have them written down. I'm sorry, my memory without notes. Acton, Concord, Newton, I think have already passed home rule resolutions. That's actually a step further than this, where they've basically asked the state to give them the ability to set this exact mandate, right? And actually take that power on for themselves. We debated actually going down that path, but again, Our concern was twofold. One, we didn't feel we had enough time to engage all the right bodies for us to logically come to that point. So we chose a slightly softer resolution. It also felt that it fitted better with the presentation of the plan itself, right? We'd do a brief presentation and then there'd be a meaningful piece of resolution to go after. But there's certainly other towns that are working on it. Arlington is another town that's actually, I think, actively working on a very similar resolution as well. So a number of towns are doing this and or have already taken steps, right, where they've gone much beyond and have had a lot of back and forth.
Okay. I think that's helpful. I think the context of that is
Yep.
going to be a really positive thing. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, before we
Go
leave,
ahead,
just
Rob.
some quick observations. One is public forum is a great idea, but the challenge is getting a lot of participation. It's very difficult. So I think the idea of going to town meeting is good because you'll have a broader group of people, but you're going to have to be succinct to the point and get that resolution passed. So I think the sooner you talk to the moderator, the better. I think one of the things I think in your favor is that the warrant list is relatively short so far. But think carefully about town meeting, how you're going to do this presentation and how long the moderator will let you take to do it. So
That's
anyway,
great
but
feedback, Rob.
thanks for all that.
And I might actually reach out to you. I personally, this is the first time I'm doing this, and certainly Matt and Rob are there to give me guidance, but I'd love to reach out to you and maybe discuss the strategy there as well and get your input.
Sure. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you, Ash. I think my thought about the town meeting, if you're looking to do it in December, I think you're really pushing it and rushing through it. And where you've put a lot of time and effort into getting all of this information and speaking very knowledgeably on this project and on this issue. I would hate to see you do a quick presentation at town meeting and there's still be a lot of confusion for those folks that would be present for the meeting and not fully understand what you're trying and what the sustainability group is trying to do. I don't know if going in April or the May town meeting would be beneficial so that you'd have more availability and time to provide more information or the same information, but to reach out and to more people and more citizens so they have a better understanding and knowledge instead of rushing it for the next 2 months. I'll leave that up to you, but that's just a thought that in my mind that, if you rush it, some people may not take the time to really fully involve their knowledge span on the information that you're offering to them. And, they may not fully understand it and you may not get a vote in a positive with respect to that because there's still need for clarification in some of those minds. So just a thought, but I'll leave that up to you. You guys are working hard on it and putting a lot of hours in. I just would hate like heck to see it rushed at the very last minute where you've spent all this time and effort into it, another month or two, or even 3 or 4 months. What's the difference? You know what I'm saying?
Actually, Joe, sorry to interrupt you, but
that's okay.
As it relates to the resolution, I think it actually does, make a difference because what the resolution is calling for is passage of laws that are in the active sort of sessions, and having that pressure up front, those processes take longer. If that feeds over, I think there is a material loss in the value of the resolution itself, right? The effectiveness of the resolution. I think you're spot on that. There's a lot of ground for us to cover as it relates to the net zero plan. So one of the actions we have is how are we able to simplify the concepts that we're presenting? We on purpose chose to give you as the select board a far more detailed presentation. I think as we think about the resolution and the presentation of the plan, we would simplify the way we talk about the plan so that the electrification portion of it is a little bit more central and hopefully doesn't require the level of nuance that we wanted you to have. Obviously you're looking at this from a wider perspective than we would. And then that is also the reason why we chose not to propose a plan that would be adopted, because that we clearly are not ready, right? We wanted to have those forums of engagement. In my mind, having the resolution happen now, and then us being able to present a plan in spring provides momentum that has been lost in the last year and a half of COVID. So I'm trying to actually gather up that momentum again. And I think that sequence is in my mind, at least, pretty important. But I think it's good feedback. I think as a committee, we'll take that back and mull it and be thoughtful about it. So I appreciate and really would like to acknowledge, right, that it's something very material to think through.
Well, thank you, Ash, again, and the entire Sustainability Committee for all their work and time into this project. It's greatly appreciated, and I know that once it's done, it'll be for the betterment of the town as a whole. 40 years from now, I don't think I'll be around, but at the same token, I think that there are many here that will be.
Yep.
Well, I'll be 107. So that, I don't think that's going to happen.
Doing it for my daughter. I'm doing it for my daughter. I'm not doing it for me.
But we'll definitely look into the passage of the resolution. We're not going to vote on it tonight. We just got that tonight, and so we can take action on it at our next meeting.
Awesome.
So we'll go with that. Okay.
Awesome. If any of you have questions, please reach back out to any member of the Sustainability Committee. And if you haven't checked it out, do check out the Solar Smart Heat Challenge. And Michael, I will be knocking on your door to get that poster up in Town Hall. So thank you again.
Thank you very much, everybody.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you, Ash. Okay. Great presentation. Greatly appreciated. So we're going down to old and new business. So I will turn it over to Michael. I know that we need to vote to accept and sign the 2020 precincting plan as presented at our last meeting. And I'm ready if you want to do a quick discussion on that. Are we good to go on that?
Sure. I just to give an update on the re-precincting and the redistricting process. So the draft maps were released last week. As we had hoped and expected, Ashland was kept whole, meaning that we weren't split up amongst different representative districts. So certainly want to thank Representative Lewis and Senator Spilka for that. Representative Lewis in his other town or city that he represents, Framingham, obviously it's not as well received there as it is here, but we're very appreciative of what he was able to do. And as such, we don't need to change any of the re-precincting lines or the precinct lines that had previously been adopted by the select board. So just looking for a motion to approve the precinct maps as presented.
Okay.
I
I'll
move
make
that,
that motion to approve the precinct maps as presented at our last meeting.
And Yolanda, you second that?
I was gonna read what was recommended, but yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. Do you have other wording that is
It was just that I would move that the select board hereby certify the meeting was held on October 20th and the select board votes to accept the 2020 re-precincting plan for the town of Ashland.
I will yield to good lady's motion.
Friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment.
a friendly amendment, and Rob will let you be the one to second, seeing
I'll
that
second
you're
it, sure.
a gentleman. All right. Voice vote, please.
Greaves, aye.
Mitchell, I.
Here, I.
Kinsman, aye.
Mignani, aye. So that's 5-0. Thank you very much. And moving right along. I know we discussed it. Did we vote on that on B, on old new business?
The night work, yes.
Yeah, the night work, right? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Update, December 1st, 2021, special town meeting and warrant articles. Mr. Michael.
Yes, so after reviewing with town council today, you have a draft of the warrant in final packet that was provided. Right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different warrant articles. Just to go through each of these and just provide a brief description. Some of them are, again, standard. Some of them are a little bit unique to this town meeting. The first one is a free cash transfer. According to our financial policies, going to the stabilization fund, the OPEB trust, and then capital, the capital account. So we hope to have our free cash certified before town meeting, but DOR is experiencing a backlog, just like many state agencies are, as well as municipalities. Obviously, we'll need to have it before town meeting. We don't want to return to the practice of having to have a meeting right before town meeting so we could get that number and make those adjustments in the warrant. So
Michael, do you have a number you want to throw out for free cash? I'm just curious.
Oh, wow. No, I don't.
All right.
That. I have been advised that it's probably going to be healthy.
Yes, as usual.
And that's
Okay.
when I go to Brittany, like, define healthy. So hopefully we'll find that out sooner rather than later. The second one is the reauthorization of the public safety building bonds. So this actually is repurposing the bonds that were authorized at the November 28th, 2018 town meeting, that were approved and authorized for the engineering and design of the project. It authorizes or reauthorizes those to be used for construction as well. So it simply, basically, just removes those limitations that were part of it. It doesn't change the overall project cost that we talked about, still the same, but this will allow us to do some, hopefully it will allow us to do some of the things that we've talked about doing in terms of solar on the building and stuff like that.
And Michael, about how much money are we talking was left from the design to be able to be used for construction?
Are we still thinking about 600,000, Jen?
Yeah, it should be once, yes. I mean, there'll be some new design money to finish off the solar, but yeah, that's a decent estimate, 500-600.
Okay, thank you.
So the next article, again, is one of our standard articles. It's a property tax exemption. We'll look at this, we'll look at the budget as we get free cash and the balance sheet certified. And so we'll look to see if we can increase the exemption amount a bit. We have tried to steadily increase it over the last 5 years. I think we started at about $500. It was about $500 for 10 years. And then in 2016, 2017, we started steadily increasing it, and it's over $800 now. So we'll see if we can continue that trend. We might not be able to make as big a jump as we have before, but certainly, hopefully, we can do something. The next one is going to be sponsored by the Community Preservation Committee, hopefully, and that's simply extending the date of the Riverwalk Trail Enhancement and Mill Pond Park Beautification projects. What happens currently is when CPC projects are presented at town meeting, there's generally a sunset date that is applied to them as well, and this extends that sunset date and gives us more time to work on things like the mill across from Mill Pond, the work there that we were planning on doing as well is another.
Michael, what is the current sunset date?
I believe it ends this year, right, Jen?
Yeah, this is June.
Yeah. So
So they
2021.
ended already, or the end of December?
End of December.
June of this year.
Fiscal year.
So
They go into December of 2023.
no, what were the date? What was the date? Right?
Have we exceeded that date?
What was the date that we're extending it from? When would these funds have expired if we don't do this?
Jen, do you have that answer?
Yeah, I do. I'm sorry. I thought you had it in front of you. Sorry.
No.
June of this past year. So we've talked.
So June 2021,
Mhm.
these funds have already expired, or
Correct.
the use of them. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, I spoke, CPC is supportive of this. I just had to sort of have a conversation today with Lisa about just how we word and make sure that we refer back to the original article. And so they'll have a meeting to formally support it, but they are supportive of them.
And how much funding is left?
I don't have the exact amount in
Okay.
front of me, but I know for Mill Pond, I believe there was about 80,000, and I want to say mostly because we ended up doing the project. It came in really over budget, and
Right.
we ended up doing it with town staff. We were hoping to again do that this fall, and so we have about 80 in there that would allow us to do the side of the project that's closest to the Ocean House.
And will that information have to be part of the, no?
No,
Could we
'cause
make it part of the presentation so people know how much is left and we're extending with that?
Yeah,
I mean,
we
I
can
think that'd be
certainly have-
beneficial.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can certainly have all those details. It just doesn't have to be, because we're not
the article.
changing the amount. It's really just about the sunset date.
Okay, thank you.
So the next CPC, the next article is also by the Community Preservation Committee, and that's authorized the funding for Marathon Park enhancements. Steve Greenberg has been talking about this, and that has received some preliminary support from the Community Preservation Committee. So that's $97,500, and half of it being taken out of the open space account and half from the historical account. So the next one is also for as the MWRA bond for inflow and infiltration work. So this is part of the MWRA's local financial assistance program. And this is going to be, this happens, obviously this is the next phase, I think phase 11. We try to do it every other year. And it consists of grant allocation and also a no interest loan allocation. So this helps support our inflow and infiltration work. Next is road acceptance, so High Street extension. And so we still need to organize and put together the layout hearing for both the planning board and the select board. And so that's being done. And then finally, we have that resolution that we just talked about calling for building decarbonization in the Commonwealth. So there's that one. Actually, second, sorry. And then also, Jen, are we deciding not to do the dog kennel clarification?
Yeah, we're not going to have enough time to put it into, it's a zoning change, so we won't be able to do it, have the public hearing prior to town meeting. And so we'll work to have that on the annual town meeting. And it's just it's a clarification of language.
Yeah. Okay. This is the 5 acre one, right? This is the 5 acre.
Yeah, it's really just making sure that the definitions of a commercial kennel match in zoning as it does for the clerk's licensing. There's two different definitions, so we just need some clarification there.
So that's going to be under legal review before anything else on the
Yeah,
clarification.
town council actually reviews all of these before they're put forward.
Okay. So is she going to review the proclamation as well?
She will. I'm not necessarily sure how much she's going to be able to add or opine on that. It's
All right. Just interested.
Yeah, it's a resolution.
I meant resolution, sorry.
Yeah. So not necessarily sure, how much legal review it's going to undergo, either at the local level or even at the AG's level, Attorney General's level. So that's what we're looking at for the warrant. We're still looking at having town meeting in the high school auditorium this time. After our discussion, obviously I was listening to our discussion and listening to Ash and the Sustainability Committee. And I think, Rob, you had mentioned getting Adam's, the moderator's input on this. Adam is typically very reserved, I think, when it comes to especially a special town meeting in the fall in terms of what warrant articles go on there. That ultimately is not his decision. It's the select boards, but Adam does run it from an operational perspective. So hopefully we can convince him to provide a little bit of time for some type of presentation. Any questions on the warrant?
So, Michael, when do we have to close the warrant by?
We need to close it at the first meeting in November. So technically, for a special town meeting, you have to close it and post it 14 days before.
November
Annual town
3rd.
meeting, it's a week. But this is
So our next meeting is November 3rd, so that's when we close it down, right? Okay.
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 And then the next item on old and new business is discussing the next round for BAA grants. So we had some discussion about this at the agenda meeting, and I think the question is, now that we have some new funding coming in, or what are we going? We've received a couple of requests that were off cycle, and I think the decision was made to have a more broader discussion at the select board meeting about how you want to address this next round of BAA grants. And Susan, did you want to add anything to that?
So when will we open up the grant application request?
I'd like you to open them if you're all in agreement. I'd like to open them sooner than later and then close it on November 17th to give you some time to review it and get it approved at your first meeting in December.
Okay.
Steve's got his hand raised.
Yep. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hi, thank you, Joe. Just a couple questions. Is there anything, Susan, that we have committed to in terms of grants that we've approved in the past at this point?
That we have pending currently?
Yeah, that we've approved in the past that haven't been utilized yet?
That I don't know the answer to.
Okay, so if you could provide that to us, maybe at the next meeting, that would be good. If there's any, it may be, maybe none, I don't know. So that's one question I have. Number two is, I think there's more than enough time to go through a round. I think if Rob and I are still the subcommittee, we have time to do that. My question is, how do we want to handle, let's say, applications from, let's say, a spring sport? Because we typically have a spring round as well. So how do we want to handle something like that? And so just something to, I know historically we haven't allowed kind of double dipping in 1 year. So do we need to create some language that, or some explanation of, so if the softball and baseball league are going to apply now, but not utilize the funds until the spring, we can defer it. We've always done that before, but then, typically we wouldn't allow them to apply again in the spring. So just a thought. I mean, I'm excited about going back to the BAA grant program. It's been a while, and I think we'll get a lot of applications. I hope we do.
Yeah, can I just ask a clarification? Steve, when are you thinking we'll get through these applications and come up with a recommendation?
So, one more time, Rob?
So if they're due November 17th, I think Susan has in there, what's our process for doing the recommendations, and what meeting are we doing that at?
Well, we probably, you and I would probably meet on Zoom and go through the applications. I think I'm not sure how we did it last time. I think last time it was pre-COVID, but and then we'd make our recommendation, put it on the first meeting, as Susan said, in December.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. So that gives us, what, 2 weeks?
Couple weeks.
All right. Okay.
Yolanda, you had your hand raised, and Brandy?
Yeah, I want to say, I thought we had one submission recently. Someone emailed us.
Yeah, we did from the racial equity group, I think.
Yes.
Right.
It was the startup.
So that would get bundled. That would get bundled into this.
Right.
round.
Okay. And I'm looking at the information in the packet, and it's some of the stuff that you talked about, Steve, is there, but some of it is not. I agree with you in regards to If they're coming in for spring sports, do we defer them? The other question I did have with the information on the applications, it says applications that do not include all the required information will be considered incomplete and will not be eligible for funding. If we get a packet that's incomplete, do you let them know that, Susan, and then they can submit the information?
We
Okay.
do, and it's not that we don't review it, but what happens is sometimes after the stuff is granted, we end up spending all this time chasing down paperwork.
Right. So they have to be considered for a grant, they have to have it all there.
Right.
By
So
the date.
I usually
Okay,
reach
perfect.
out to them as they come in. I review them before they even go to Steve and Rob.
Okay. And if Steve and Rob are willing to be the subcommittee, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
There's a second?
Well, let me amend that then. I move that we open our fall BAA grant round with Steve and Rob as our subcommittee to review.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Brandy. Voice vote.
Greaves, aye.
Mitchell, I.
Here I.
Kinsman, aye.
Vignani, aye. Thank you guys for being blind. For taking it over. I appreciate it.
The one thing I wanted to just say, though, I know that technically for a BAA grant, it needs to be a 501c3. But I would say, we did get a request in from area. They are looking to become a 501c3. So I would say, like, just to not necessarily, we had talked at our agenda meeting that maybe we could have those funds come out of the Selectmen's gift account versus the BAA funds. So I just wanted to throw that out there to make sure that was considered.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I wasn't fully
I
aware
think-
that they had to be
I'm
501c.
not
We
aware.
talked that a couple years ago, we talked about how they need to be a nonprofit of some sort to be able to get the funding to them.
Yeah, but I don't know if we defined it as an official 501c3. I think most of the groups that we deal with are all volunteer-based nonprofits. So, but I think, Brandy, to go to your point, I think we have in the past, we have distributed startup costs to other organizations. So that's certainly not out of line with as a request goes.
And I think we have funded individuals for small projects as well.
We have for small projects without salaries, though.
So,
Yeah, or whatever, but they're not organizations
That's
necessarily.
correct.
so just to clarify, the BAA requires communities that get BIBs that the money that is raised goes to a qualified 501c3.
Oh,
So
okay.
they've started
I've lost
cracking
track
down
of
on
that.
that.
They
And
have.
so that is the restriction with BAA funds. We don't have that same type of restriction on the Selectmen's gift account.
Okay.
Okay.
Sue, is that what you were going to
And I
say?
thought,
All
Yeah.
right.
That's what I thought.
Sue,
Okay. Yeah.
who was going to straighten us out? Okay.
You still, it's just, a different bucket. You
Yeah.
can
Yeah. Okay.
switch and
Okay. We can take care of that for sure.
Okay.
But were there, Michael,
yes.
with respect to that, with area, and their request, where they're filing for a 501c, status, and they don't have that yet, knowing that they're going after it, could we still use that bid money
You could
from?
No, you could use the Selectmen's gift account though.
Okay, right. All
We'll do
right.
that.
Okay.
Or you could, if you
Make
didn't
it
wanna-
cleaner. Yeah. Okay.
if you didn't want to spend it all out of the Selectmen's gift account, maybe you split it up and you give money out of this part of the money out of the Selectmen's gift account to get them to that 501c3 status, and then you can take the rest of the money out of the BAA
Mhm.
bib money once they've achieved that status.
Okay. So
Not
as
really
of,
sure- Yeah, I'm not really sure how long it takes now to get a 501c3 filed and established,
Yeah.
just kind of with the way.
it takes a while now.
Yeah.
I
It
did
wasn't-
make one modification on the grant application too. I put in for people to say whether or not they had that status. That way you guys could determine where you're gonna take the money from too, if you're keeping track. I know a lot of times Rob and Steve try to keep track of the money they're spending. I thought it would make it easier.
And are we still going to keep the same spending level at 2,500
That's-
I think we should.
That's up to you guys.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, because if we're gonna take some monies out of the selectmen account and not the BAA account.
Yeah.
I know that we had a max of 25, so I wasn't sure if we're gonna,
I think, Joe, that's a good number. I mean, we can always, talk about things, but I think it's a good number because I think we're providing grants to assist, not to fully fund. That's the way I approach it. At least.
Yep.
And I think Rob does as well. I think the
Okay.
board has. So
I
we
think
don't,
it,
it's important that groups are, they are involved with fundraising on a number of levels. And so that's my thoughts on that.
I would agree with that. I think it also allows us to provide funding to more groups.
That's right.
right,
I mean, I know we have one or two where we have to do a little bit more to match certain things, but I think
Yeah.
in general, if we keep it at the 2,500, it's up to 2,500.
And it also allows us, a bucket of money to utilize for projects that we as a board may want to pursue, which we've done in the past.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. Sounds good. Okay, so the BAA applications or the bid application process is open starting tomorrow?
Sounds good.
Sounds good? All right,
Sounds like a plan.
very good. Okay, Michael, we're moving on to priority project updates, and we'll start with the Rail Transit District. It's all yours.
Thank you. So the first is the United Group of Companies, the UGC project. So I'm happy to let the board know that UGC actually agreed to the changes that the board had required and requested as part of their defense agreement, the legal defense agreement. So that's good. I really don't have any other update besides that. That's actually taken a little while longer than what we anticipated. So does anybody have any questions on UGC? I don't
No.
think there's been any change of plans or anything of that nature. Charlie Brook Trail update. I believe they're still waiting for some of the concrete to cure on the abutments. Jen, is that the way you understand it as well? And at that point, they can put the bridge on, and soon, hopefully, they'd be able to pave. Hopefully, we can get it done before this paving season ends. Jen, you're giving me the look. Do you? What are your thoughts about that, just based on the latest? You probably have more up-to-date info on that.
Yeah, I think we're still hopeful that it will be done during this paving season for sure. I mean, that's definitely the goal.
Yeah. Well, it depends really on the weather. That's just the factor, the big factor. So downtown, any questions on Charlie Brook Trail?
Oh yeah, just a little update. Jen, I think we're meeting tomorrow along with Valerie, and I think is Beth and Ashley going to be there as well? That's great. So this is planning for the opening. So if people have any thoughts on the grand opening, hopefully we'll be able to do it. If things keep moving, we're going to have to pick a date and then, decide what the heck we're going to do and who to invite and all the speechifying and all that stuff. So people have any thoughts on that? We're moving ahead with that, hopefully. So
Yeah, Rob.
cutting the ribbon. Yeah. Do we have the
Yeah,
big
we-
scissors and that kind of stuff?
Who's going to be
Have
the
the
first?
ribbon and big scissors.
Who's cycling? Who's going to be the first bicycle down the trail?
There's a thought. I think people have snuck through it already, but
So Rob, just in thinking of that, some of the things that you can do that aren't necessarily date dependent are thinking about the invitees that you'd like to see there. And, ribbon, obviously you've thought about whether or not you want to have the ribbon there and have the big scissors. So it's certainly something that can be done, but hopefully, we can put together the program and then the date, once that's settled, hopefully everybody can attend. That's on the list.
Joe will be there on his electric bicycle.
He's going to be there on his Heelys.
Oh, there's Heelys. Yeah. Okay.
Talked about. You're
All
muted.
right. Great. So hopefully we'll get moving. We'll keep moving.
Joe, you're muted. I just want to point that out.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
We did get an email from Joe Beitman regarding easement acquisition process, and seeing that we're talking about the Upper Charles Trail.
Sure.
That's something we want to bring up at our next meeting to discuss, and is that something that needs to be done in an executive session because of property issues?
I would say not. I think it's more of an administrative task, but that is a point. If you think we're going to be talking about confidential stuff, I was going to bring this up under board reports, but I think it's good to either discuss at our retreat or discuss at the next meeting. I think that's a good idea.
Rob, you have the parcels that you.
Tony certainly does. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe it would be
Yeah.
helpful to have Joel come to our next meeting and present the map and talk about those spaces again, because it's been a while since
Yeah,
we've
no, that's a good
had an
point.
update from them.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd be thrilled to come, and along with probably Tony and other members to talk about this now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Trolley Brook Trail, let's the update on that. Downtown construction update. So they've been working a lot this week towards that intersection with Summer and Homer in Main Street. Doing a lot of that work. I think I might have mentioned this at the last meeting. We did get a request from BSC for more construction administration funds. And so Doug and I had a pretty candid conversation with Bill Paley from BSC last Thursday. So that has not been resolved, but we've certainly let them know our concerns, some of our thoughts about that, and we've included some other people at BSC as well. So, that discussion is still ongoing, and that's other than that, we're still trying to work with Eversource on some of the issues related to the track. Just always seems to be a new thing. So we get one
Mike,
problem solved. Yeah.
I just have something occurred to me, because when we talk about Eversource, is it really two different companies, the gas and the electric, and how does that work when you're going through doing utilities?
Well, technically they are two different companies, but they are, they certainly have a shared corporate infrastructure.
I see. So you're able to negotiate with one body for all the both electric and gas. Is that how it works out?
Yeah, I've tried to figure out what kind of interplay actually happens between the gas and electric side, and whether or not some of the pushback that we have initiated on some of the gas projects, if that has resulted in any kind of delays on the gas or the electric side as well. It's nobody's going to offer that up and be explicit about that, but yes, I mean I can work with both. And fortunately, Doug has a pretty good relationship with Eversource. Doug's obviously got the boots on the ground type of relationship with some of those guys, and I think at the policy level it might be a little bit different, but we make sure that we are coordinated as much as possible with that. So moving forward with the public safety in Mendez schools.
Excuse me a second, Michael, before you move on. I do want to mention, because I want to keep it in our awareness, the current police and fire station complex downtown. And my belief that we should be starting the kind of the planning, the thinking of where do we move forward when both departments move into a new building. So I'm probably going to mention it at every meeting, but is this something that our economic development office would start to put together some conceptual thoughts? And I don't know what your thinking is on that, but again, I think it's advisable that we start to think about this now.
I mean, I think we can certainly talk to.
I second that.
It's certainly ideal. Let's I think it would be ideal to be able to do that. I would certainly agree with that.
Is there any research we need to do on the parcels and just make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row as far as what we can and can't do?
Oh, there's a ton of research that
Yeah.
will need to be done, especially given the site, especially with the fire station. I mean, I just recently found out that we use CPC funds to replace the floors in the fire station, which means that there's a CPC historic restriction on that property.
Okay. Interesting. Michael,
Yeah.
any environmental issues that we may be faced with as well?
Yeah, I mean, it sits over the plume. We're pretty close to it. You know, we certainly have had groundwater issues. I'm not necessarily saying those two are conflated or together, but certainly as climate change has impacted us and storms have gotten worse and worse, you know, that becomes more and more of a consideration. There's a lot of aspects about it. So it's going to take a lot of work, I think, to do this and to do it right. And I think, Yolanda, one of the things that you mentioned earlier in this meeting is really trying to learn some lessons from some previous projects and the way we, you know, went down some of those roads. I think, you know, we learned quite a few lessons from that. So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily want to repeat some of the lessons or repeat some of the mistakes, but you know, I will say I will be talking, I think, at our retreat specifically about staffing and talking about some of the things that we want to accomplish and some of the things that we're currently doing and what we're really going to need in terms of doing them right and being able to do them. So I think, you know, that's something, this is one of those projects that we certainly should keep in mind as we have that discussion.
And Michael, just to piggyback real quick on what you just said with respect to the retreat, any items that anybody is looking to put on the agenda, send them either to myself or to Brandy or Michael with respect to that, so we can get them on the agenda and have it posted.
Thank you.
And so the 126 project, actually, I'll start off. Joe had mentioned this earlier when we were going through the request for night work. So Doug has talked to the construction crews for both Eversource and Northern. They're the ones doing the 126 project. And so they have requested doing some night work closer to Elliott Street and 126, hopefully next week. So it would be for 4 nights. Again, similar hours to what we talked about before, 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. It's still primarily, well, I was about to say, you know, right on the road, it's primarily commercial, but you have residences that, you know, aren't necessarily that much farther away. So, you know, I do want to be sensitive to that. So
I counted 7 residents in that area.
So we certainly want to be sensitive of that.
Yep, absolutely.
You know, if the board is amenable to that, I'll let Doug know, and you know, they can let Eversource know.
Well, my thought is, go ahead, Yolanda.
Sorry, I would just say that, you know, that we make sure that we communicate out to them. I don't know that we can rely on them being on the email chain or, you know, the email distribution, but specifically if there's homes that are near where they're going to be working, let them know so that the police don't get the call at whatever time saying, hey, they're being noisy outside my home. And I don't know, do we need to pass some kind of, you know, should we vote some kind of waiving of the noise bylaw to allow them to do that work? Or
so the permission to allow them to do that work would suffice for that.
Okay.
But I take it to heart, the notification. I think some more proactive outreach. And
exactly. The more, you know, the more you can let people know it's going to be happening, then they won't be quite as upset. I mean, they still might not like it, but if they understand it's coming and they can plan for it or be prepared for it, it's always better.
Yeah.
And it makes the road a little bit smoother as they travel up and down the road. That's better for them as well.
And if we didn't allow the work to happen, what would be the sort of the other side of it? What would be the consequences of it?
So it just means more, you're extending out the pain of the project in general. So if you're doing paving, you'll have to shut a whole lane off during the day. And obviously that's when traffic occurs. You know,
Didn't
most
we
of
talk
the
about that?
traffic. occurs.
Did we not talk about that, having the work done in front of the residential area during the day, even though it would take longer? I could swear that we had an Eversource rep at a meeting and we discussed that. And because of the concern of noise all night long in front of the residents, it's one thing in front of the commercial, nobody cares. But so did I dream that?
No, I think we've talked about that for specific. I don't remember exactly for 126, Steve. I think we have talked about it with other, requests,
I think it was Pond and
especially on
Elliott
Elliott
Street.
Street.
It was Pond and Elliott Street when they were talking about digging up that roadway and then
Yeah.
coming up to Meeting House Path and then a little past Elliott Street beyond the intersection, about 200 feet beyond the intersection.
Yeah, towards the Sherburne side.
Correct.
Yeah, there's a couple of houses right there.
Right there.
That's what
Yeah.
we talked about.
So yeah, we did talk
I had
about
a-
it.
I was just
I
gonna
had a
say,
question for Steve. Steve, do you often dream about us or?
I didn't dream about you.
Okay,
Wow.
got that straight. All right.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, to Steve's point, like, if we can minimize the impact to the residents in that area, because they're already going through quite a bit, I would want to communicate that to Doug and to the folks doing the construction work, just because I wouldn't want a crew right outside my front door at 2 o'clock in the morning. So, if we can minimize that, that would be good.
Yeah, I told Doug that he needs to, either put some core, not just depend upon an email list or even depend on Eversource to get the word out. We need to make sure that we proactively do it. And he gave me the thumbs up. So, Doug.
We can call Doug at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, Doug, we're getting complaints.
You know what? Knowing Doug, he's probably up at 2 o'clock in the morning worrying about.
I'm sure he is.
Knowing
I'm
Doug.
sure he is. So
And
do we
I'll
need to
probably
take,
get a text or an email from him.
so should we take a vote on this so to make it official?
Sure.
So I would entertain a motion to allow Eversource the ability to work between 7 and 5. I believe it's Monday through Thursday, or it could be even less, depending upon how much work they get done, to re-hot top the areas where they've been working.
Can I amend that, Joe, to say with
Sure.
notification to the residents impacted?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
moved.
add that to it. So there's a,
There's a motion.
yep. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, voice vote, please.
Greaves, aye.
Mitchell, I.
Here, I.
Kinsman, I.
Lignani, aye. All right, that's 5-0. Let Dougie know. But make sure that they get those notifications out to the residents that are along that route.
Will do.
Thank you.
That's it on 126. I just do want to let everybody know or remind everybody it's not a pleasant thing to remind people of, but this is going to be a multi-year project, and so it's not only going to stretch through 2022, it's going to go into 2023. So like I said, I know nobody likes to hear that. I certainly don't like to be the one that says that, but it's a massive project. It's certainly a major project. It's been decades in the making. Unfortunately, what happens is when you defer, projects and, instead of doing things maybe sections at a time, you have this one big backlog that has to be accomplished. So again, I definitely appreciate the residents and anybody traveling through their patience on this. It's certainly appreciated. So moving on to the Valentine project, I think I did note that we did have the cabling plan put together in the foundation. We have put that plan, or both of those, the cabling plan out to get different quotes for that project. I believe we sent them out to 6 different firms. Is that correct, Jen? I don't know if you had an updated conversation with Doug, but I think it was 6. 6 different firms. So I'm not necessarily sure if we've got any others back except the one that we do have. But we do have at least one. So the hope is that, and the desire is that we get that cabling done and everything secured before the end of the year or before bad weather hits. And then Steve and Brandy, did you have a date set up for
We do.
subcommittee?
Yeah, we're going to meet next Wednesday, the 27th. And it looks like either 6:30 or 7 o'clock. Brandy, does that work? Either time work for you?
Yeah, either time works for me.
So we'll set, I've got it on my notes to do, to put together an agenda and post it tomorrow. So we'll be all set.
Just going back to the costs. So we got an email from Julie talking about the estimate to repair the barn. So I know you put it on the list, I think, for the ARPA funding. Do we have a good estimate for the barn?
We
or is
really
it
have
just
no
kind of
estimate.
early? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just kind of have estimated an amount of money for that, right? And we're not sure what's going to happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've set aside, knowing how much like the Warren barn was going to cost and looking at things like the scope and, Doug Scott's certainly been a good resource for us in terms of bringing some experience to the table in terms of project costs. That's really our best guess at it, Rob. I wouldn't say it's an official estimate. Okay. And then moving on to town manager report.
Excuse me a second, Michael. Did you do the Mendez and the public safety building?
I didn't do the public safety.
No.
Oh,
No, you skipped right by it. That's okay. I know you want to go home.
so I apologize for that. So everybody, I think, can see the progress on the public safety building. Over the next 3 weeks, they're still going to be working on the building exterior, the 3-story structure, and that's, all the admin and holding areas, the Sally Port, the apparatus bay, and just doing some of the utility and drainage work as well. So you'll continue to see, business as usual there. We do have a public safety building committee next week, and looking forward to that with our consultants. So have more updates on that. And I don't know if there's anything anybody else wanted to add, Joe, Steve, or Jen.
We're meeting in person.
We're meeting in person, I believe, our professional consultants will be virtual.
Virtual, correct.
And with Mendez, we do hope the appeal period, I think the appeal period does expire soon, if not today. So, we're looking forward to that. I believe everybody got comments from the MSBA regarding the 60% construction document design. I didn't necessarily see anything there that stood out to me. Certainly, it's a lot of stuff to comment on. Again, really can't over. I really can't say enough good things about the MSBA process. It's pretty structured, which sometimes can be a difficult bureaucratic thing to work in, but it's definitely, I think, been a good thing and a good experience for us.
Michael, question on the appeal period. It's related to the permits from planning board and or Concom. Is that
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. So both of those.
And you guys know I still want you to try to save that tree, right? So
Yep,
I'll talk to you about it.
we're aware.
Very good.
Okay, so now moving on to town manager report. So we've already discussed the update on the statewide redistricting process. I don't think anybody had any questions regarding that. I did provide for you the updated letter on other post-employment benefits. So we are required every couple years to get that actuarial liability determined. And so we did receive that. I think think everybody had a chance to review that. It's the letter that you'll see from Odyssey Advisors. So our liability did increase 13,736,000, which is a significant increase. That being said, our funded ratio actually increased a little bit from 7.07% to 7.13%. So that's a good sign. But in terms of that increase, you'll see what the breakdown comes to, obviously with the passage of time. So service costs, interest and payments, it's a little over 3 million. Assumption changes. And so that means changes to the mortality table and some actuarial assumptions. That resulted in almost a $12 million increase. And then based on our history, our utilization history, that's what's called plan experience. That actually helped reduce our liability by $1.2 million. So that gives our total liability at $66,943,000. Now, an interesting thing is that we did have a conversation, Brittany and I, with Parker Elmore, who is the gentleman who does this actuarial valuation for us. And actually, some of these assumption changes, we have the opportunity to just push off if we want to. I think it's certainly in our best interest to go ahead and include the full cost as it is right now, and not necessarily kick the can down the road. Again, this is a paper liability, but I think it's something that we should plan on and account for. And so
question about the assumptions. So you say the mortality rate based on mortality. So the assumption is that life expectancies have increased.
That's
and
correct.
Reflected in this. But it's interesting. I read an article just the other day about life expectancy has actually declined during COVID. And
the pandemic will do that. Yeah.
Right. So like a year and a half. So I don't know how these charts must get updated all the time. So this must be a snapshot of a particular.
It is, and these actuarial tables, I know they don't just come up with them in a vacuum. I know there's some science and data behind it. I think it's a closely guarded secret amongst actuaries in the nation, probably located in the Pentagon somewhere. But yes, Steve, you can probably find a couple of different discrepancies there. But the other thing that Brittany and I have discussed is also revisiting our OPEB policy and maybe starting to put together a little bit more of a long-term thought process with regards to that. I mean, currently we have our strategy in place for funding things right now, but there are certainly some things that we can discuss that we've talked about, but haven't necessarily formalized. And so that's something that I think we should have a discussion about, in the near future, I think, and make those changes, certainly before our next valuation.
And Michael, just a quick question for you. So this valuation that we see here, is that updated on an annual basis, or is it more frequent than that?
Biannual.
Biannual. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
So every other year.
And then Michael, in regards to, what our valuation is and what we have available to pay that valuation, where are we at?
So that's the funded ratio I mentioned, Yolanda. So I don't have that exact, the dollar amount figure, but it did go from, like I said, it was a slight increase, which I was surprised, from 7.07 to 7.1.
Oh, okay. Percent,
correct.
Okay. So, are we on a good track? Are we okay? Are we, do we need to be looking at putting more money into that? Do we need to be putting less? I mean, or is that part of the plan that you're talking about we need to be looking at in the future?
Well, that's part of the plan. I think we need to think about in the future. As long as our funded ratio is increasing, that's a good sign. Certainly, if our funded ratio started decreasing, I think we would need to really look at it and make some probably more immediate or short-term changes. But I think, given the fact of where we've positioned ourselves, we have the ability to think a little bit more long-term and start thinking more in terms of a 20, 25, 30-year horizon.
Okay.
And one of the major things I'm thinking about doing is formalizing a policy that, right now with our retirement, with pension, we're required to fully fund that by the year 2038.
Okay.
So Middlesex County retirement. So we, each year when we're paying our retirement assessment, we're actually paying a catch-up. A portion of that is actually part of a catch-up provision as well.
Oh, okay.
So once that is fully funded in 2038, I'd like us to consider redirecting that pension assessment, that catch-up for a pension assessment towards OPEB.
Okay.
As well.
Makes sense.
And so that will certainly make a difference. So
A
any
better
other
plan than we
questions?
ever had. I say it's a better plan than we've ever had, that's for sure.
Well, it's working.
It is.
It's certainly from where we started, we're in a good spot.
Mhm.
We're in a good spot. Just want to update everybody on some holiday programs. Obviously, we weren't able to do a lot of them or any of them really last year, which is something I missed, and I think a lot of us missed. We had to, some of the programs that we did have, we had to change around quite a bit. So we're starting off this season with trick-or-treating again at Town Hall. So I would encourage you all to come by from 5 to 7. We're going to have, typically our staff dress up, put costumes on. I say typically, we've done it one time before. They'll have candy here for the little ones. Eventually I'd love for it to serve as an educational opportunity about what some of our departments do, but let's be honest, not too many 5 or 6-year-old kids even know what a tax bill is, much less care.
I think you can
So-
make that comment.
So they want to know all about
60 and
that. Then get them
70-year-olds
going
too.
on assessments. Well,
That's true. That's true. Maybe it's just wishful thinking on my part. But anyway, we'll start with that. And then Joe, the parade will be happening on the 30th. Is that correct?
29th.
29th, I meant.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'll bring it up in board reports, so, yeah.
Okay. So we'll have that. I think the Moms Club is having an event on the 30th where they'll be at the corner spot and doing a little programming there before heading over to the police and fire station to do some trick-or-treating. And then we also have some, I was about to say Christmas programs, but holiday, seasonal programs. And so just to start with those, I think on the 4th, I think Santa's going to make an appearance in town somehow, some way.
December 4th?
December 4th, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Certainly not November 4th.
I was gonna say, we're missing a few holidays, aren't we? Right?
Well, Thanksgiving, I'm not necessarily sure if we have like a town-wide Thanksgiving event. That might be something that we should do. We are looking at doing another holiday stroll this year. And then we'll also plan on doing Illuminate Ashland. The plans are for that to be on the 11th. And certainly people should watch out for details on that. But again, I'm really looking forward to getting back to those programs and some of the things that are a little bit more interesting and fun than, talking about layout hearings and warrants and grant of location agreements and stuff like that. And then wanted to give you an update on.
Michael, hold on one second. I just wanted
Yeah.
to let folks know, just to go back to the holiday program. So the community center that does the holiday gifts for local families is changing up the program a little bit this year. Randy Martins is coordinating the program this year, and she's reached out to previous donors to see if they want to continue to donate to the program, but they're not doing a paper mailing out to folks this year. So if people would like to be part of the holiday program and adopt kids here in Ashland, the best way to kind of get engaged with that is to text Randy, and I can give you her number because I can do that. 617-276-5353, and just include your name, your email address, and the number of kids you want to adopt, because they rely heavily on residents' generosity to give so much back to our kids. So if it's not too early to start thinking about that, because it's right around the corner. So
No.
The name of the contact again is Randy?
Randy Martins.
Can we push that on the website, town website? So if people aren't watching this tonight, they at least they go on the website and see something about, you know, holiday gift giving and do something like that as well.
Yeah, I'm sure Randy's coordinating with Jennifer and,
Okay.
and Courtney and some of the people there. So it should definitely be, you know, on the
Cool.
webpage and then social media and the outlets that they utilize to get the word out, certainly.
Cool.
So I'll move on to the COVID testing site. It's certainly been very popular, you know, up until October 18th. So, you know, not too long ago, a couple of days ago, we had over 900 people utilize the testing site. So that's been great. You know, generally, I think each day we've seen you know, positivity rates or detected rates of about 2%. There's been a couple of anomalies, but for the most part, they've stayed pretty steady. I will have to say I've received a lot of great feedback about the site and the availability of it, and how it's really just been a lifesaver for some people. You know, they have to get a test really quick, and that's, you know, there's the availability there. So certainly want to congratulate everybody that was a part of that in putting that together. So looking forward to seeing that continue, and hopefully it'll continue to provide convenience and an opportunity for our residents to, you know, get tested when they feel like they need to. And then the last thing that I have is not on the agenda. I wanted to talk a little bit about the board meeting on December. So typically we meet one time in December. December 1st is the first Wednesday, and we have town meeting that day. So what I'd like to propose is that we meet on December 8th for our meeting, and that way we're not necessarily meeting on the 15th, you know, 10 days before Christmas.
Right.
But certainly, you know, as the board wishes, but that's something that I would suggest. Okay with that?
I don't have an issue with it. I don't know about the other board members, unless they're gonna do holiday shopping. I take extra large, and that's fine.
I would actually prefer the 8th to the 15th, so
Okay.
I'm good with that.
I'm good.
So are we having a second meeting in December or not?
No, we would not.
Okay.
Good with the 8th too.
Everybody's good with the 8th?
Yeah, that should work.
Okay. The 8th it'll be.
Thank
Changed it
you.
on my calendar.
And that's all I have for right now.
Thank you,
Mike, can I
Mr.
ask you a couple of town manager questions before we move on? Simple
Of
one.
course.
So we're talking about Frank in the past tense. What's going on? I didn't hear anything, so.
Well, we talked about it actually when you mean moving forward?
Well, is Frank, what happened with Frank? Talk about Frank Nication.
Yeah. So Frank left. We talked
Oh.
about it when we talked about Megan leaving as well.
Oh, we did. I'm sorry. I must have missed that completely. Okay,
Remember,
well,
you were
that's
talking
too
about
bad.
you were talking about our exodus of staff, Rob.
Yeah, okay.
And
right.
I didn't know if
I
you
was-
meant like exodus of our staff, or you were talking about exodus of staff.
No, yeah, no, I
for
missed it. I missed Frank. So that's, what was the story there? He just
So
got a
Frank-
better job or something?
Well, there is no better job than working
That's
here.
true.
Right,
Yeah.
Jen?
Jen,
But no, he
wake
had an
up.
opportunity to go be a planner, a more generalized planner position.
Oh,
in
cool.
Waltham.
All right.
So it was an upgrade in responsibility.
All right. And what's you got kind of a plan? How are things looking in terms of replacing him? Or?
Well, you know, I had a good conversation with the sustainability committee, and I think you noticed one of their things that they wanted us to think about looking, you know, moving forward is to, you know, ensure our staff view things, view projects, view the work that they do through the lens of sustainability. I'm not necessarily sure the structure that we had really lent itself to that. Frank kind of
Okay.
operated on an island, And, that could have been just more of his personality, or it could have been the way we designed the job description. So, the plan is to fill that role. I'm not necessarily sure if it will be something like a sustainability coordinator, sustainability director, an environmental planner. But certainly, the goal is to have a role here that provides a little bit more interaction and cohesiveness in the stuff that we're talking about.
Oh, that's probably good. Okay. And the other one is the High Street gate has been open for the past several weeks. Is that like, why is it open, or as
The
opposed to being
MBTA
closed?
has access to that. They keep opening it up.
Who's that?
The MBTA group,
Oh,
the guys, they open it up. I actually saw them doing it yesterday. It
Oh, that's
was closed,
interesting.
and then they opened it back up for whatever reasons, I don't know.
The only thing I can think of, and it might be good to mention here, is I've noticed some construction activity there. So it looks like they're replacing the flooring, and they're actually using wood.
yeah, I saw the wood.
so-
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe what they're doing is they've opened that so they can,
That's interesting.
Well,
Do we have an
actually-
official policy? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what I think of it. I think it's convenient because people come through there. People have heard, and they're just driving through there now. So it's like,
I don't know what you're talking about, Rob.
Yeah.
Robert, worked out pretty well.
Let's keep
especially
talking
when-
about it.
Yeah, especially when Pleasant Street was blocked off.
Yeah. Well, that's a good
It took
point.
a lot of that excess
Sure.
vehicles
Sure.
out of this, so
Yeah.
it did help to some respect as well.
Well, I remember years ago, of course, the people on High Street were all worried about all the traffic, and here it is, it's been open, and I don't think anyone even notices. So that's an
No.
interesting point.
That's a lot of times the way it goes, right? With a lot of these things. So that's,
All right, thank you. That was just my
Yeah.
kind of wonder
Okay,
about
so
that.
Rob took up 5 minutes of his time already. I just,
So that was town manager updates. Come on.
no, no. All right, Rob, seeing that you have the floor and
Well,
the town
all right.
manager is done, you're up, Robert.
Okay, well, I'm going to assume that Brandy's going to talk about inclusionary zoning, housing, so I'm not going to mention that, right? Okay. Really, the only, there's this Transportation for Mass organization that Josh Ostroff, who I think we know, heads up, and I go to they held this ARPA funding update the other day, and they had the new Secretary of Transportation, Stephanie Pollock's replacement. I think his name's Tesla. But, I guess, he talked about a lot of different programs and transportation programs, basically. But I think the thing that might be worth just passing along is that he seems very aware of the need, when you talk about transportation, to also talk about pedestrian and bicycle and complete streets. And he had this new grant program called Shared Streets, or I think. And so they're kind of also moving in that direction a lot. So I think it behooves us to be aware that, with any luck, we're going to have more options for kind of your traditional street construction, whether it's complete streets or related programs. And also, he says they're ready to apply for the new federal funds as soon as the bipartisan bill gets passed. And the other one, they're already preparing their applications to get federal funds. So I think, it just behooves us to be aware of that and be ready to apply and think about how we're going to use these potentially funds that are going to be available for a variety of infrastructure projects of all types. And the other thing kind of related that we all got the email about the supplemental for 200 million for Chapter 90. And if that seems to us this is from MMA, if that seems to us to be a realistic thing, I don't know if we could just ask Michael to write our legislators and say that we support that supplemental, or if we want to talk about it more, but it seems to me it's kind of routine. Michael, are you familiar with that I just saw it today, so.
Yeah,
This afternoon.
it's the typical request each year that doesn't get,
Yeah.
This, Rob, that doesn't get funded. I think it does go to your point that you made a couple meetings ago, Rob, just in terms of, these state programs, whether they're grants or Chapter 90 programs and things like that. And maybe we should rethink that paradigm in terms of distributing state aid to municipalities.
Well, but I don't know if we think the MMA's request for additional 200 million to add to, I think it's 500 million, if I remember correctly. We should just endorse that, I guess.
No, I certainly think we should.
Yeah.
I think the total was 333 million they were adding to that Rob.
Is that? Oh, I remembered it was 200 million, but I could be wrong. But it seems whatever that, it seems like they have the funds, and we should just push for it. And I think that's about. So I don't know. Is that something, Michael? You can just, or should we? The ask was for us to contact our legislators as individuals. So I don't know if we're in the mood for having a collective communication, or if we should just contact people ourselves. I'm just throwing that out for consideration. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks, if we care or.
We do.
I mean, we can do I think a joint communication. If each of us sent something, that would probably be six different communications as opposed.
So
to
I guess, Michael, we're, then the ask would be for you to put something in, okay. And use whatever language I think you think is appropriate. So I think I'm just looking at my notes. I think that's all I had. I'm glad that Joe suggested putting the Upper Charles Trail parcel email from Joel on the next agenda. I think that's a good idea, because I think we want to have, and I'm going to ask, as I think I mentioned before at our retreat, that we make the Upper Charles Trail priority project. We can have that discussion, but I think, getting those parcels and getting the control of the route is going to be essential, especially in the coming years when we're going to have funding available. I don't know if you guys saw the paper, like yet another story about the Cochituate Rail Trail spending $20 million to cross Route 9. We're just asking for a very small amount. So anyway,
that was part of a very large project that went through the tip, that went through, it took them a while to get that. So
yeah, sure.
That's the kind of work that they had to do. Yeah.
And, we could do, I think, as good or better with far less. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. So I think so my point is that getting control of the route and having at least something concrete in mind is going to be key as we look at funding in the coming year. So that's all I had. So thank you,
sir. Appreciate it. Ms. Yolanda.
Okay. Just a couple things. So I had an MAPC Executive Committee meeting today. They are going to be taking their Metro Common 2050, which is their regional plan that takes them out to 2050, obviously. It is being approved next week at the full council meeting, which I'll be attending. Fortunately, it's a virtual meeting. They have two bills that they were talking about that the House and the Senator started to talk about, is the idea of a public bank. So that was interesting. Basically, it's a bank run by the state, not like your regular bank. So there's some bills at the House level for that. Also, there's a discussion of an extended bottle bill that would put the 5 cents on more bottles. So those are some interesting things coming out and being discussed. I think that's it. I mean, there's some other things that I did, but that's okay. It's almost 10. I don't want us to have to go past 10 o'clock. So thank you.
I think it's going to happen anyway.
Oh,
but thank you, Ms.
Challenge was issued.
I know. Okay. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Just a few things, but I may bring us past 10 o'clock. So if you want to make a motion, we're gonna.
So moved.
Anyway,
All those in favor?
Aye.
aye. If I
Aye.
don't do it, Brandy would.
Aye.
So first thing, Ashland Farmers Market, we just completed our 10th season. Just want to thank the community for the support, 10 years of support and, great support during these 2 years of the pandemic. We do have a pre-Thanksgiving market that we are doing on November the 20th, Saturday. It will be outdoors and it'll be at the Farmers Market site. I did some weather research and November 20th historically is pretty decent day. So hopefully it'll come to pass. So
So the inches of snow.
Question about masking in public buildings. We're reading about the schools moving towards getting rid of the masking mandate. Ashland High School has been approved by the state because 80% of our staff and students apparently have been vaccinated. So what's the plan for public buildings? And I've brought this up in the past. I'd like to see us get back to live meetings, but it's really predicated on the mandate that we currently have of masking in town buildings. So any comment on that, Mr. Town Manager?
It's funny you mentioned that. We actually had a discussion about that yesterday with Ed and Rajit and Jen. I share the desire to get back to live meetings as much as possible, although I do think the hybrid component certainly adds a lot. I've certainly been awakened to the benefits that it has for accessibility purposes. So I am looking at removing that mandate soon. We need to talk about a few different things here internally. I will point out, like Hopkinton High School was approved to remove their mask mandate, but actually their Board of Health recommended that it stay on. So I think we would need to get Board of Health input on that.
I think there's a process. I'm bringing it up only because I really feel that most of us are behaving pretty normally out in the world, and this is one area where we are not because of this mandate for masking in public buildings. So I'm not going to belabor it. I'll look forward to hearing an update as they come forth.
Yeah, Steve, just a final point. We'll probably, if we do anything, we'll probably look at loosening that in town hall first. Yep. And, obviously the library trustees have input on the library, but the community center, it might stay on a little while there just because of some of the dynamics in play over there. Sure. In the population.
Yeah, and maybe it makes sense, Michael, to look at it after the first of the year at this point, and kind of ease it in as you're suggesting, phase it in. So thank you.
What is what's the percentage of employees vaccinated, town staff?
I mean, we're well over 90%. I think we're closer to 95%.
Yeah. That include the police and first responders, by the way?
Yes.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, that is good to hear. All right, my next item is, I just wanted to make note, I brought this up at several meetings recently, the open space and recreation plan. I'm happy to inform the board that the 2017 plan that we've been told is a draft and hasn't been approved by the state is in fact approved by the state. I had an email from the state agency that oversees it. It has been approved and it's effective through 2024. And I bring it up again only because of the conversations we're having about priority properties and about acquisitions of open space and how it all ties in together to a lot of things, the trail, climate action, and so on. So I talked to Joe. I believe he's going to schedule the open space committee to provide us with a with a presentation of some sort. Hopefully they're aware that their plan is in fact approved. So we'll look forward to that.
Steve, should that be an executive session, or what are we thinking about that?
The open space plan?
Well, only because Roberta's always talking about the need to keep certain things confidential. I mean, I was
Well,
just
we don't have to
wondering.
get into specifics. I think that,
Okay,
to have a
right.
presentation about the plan.
okay.
and to inform the residents.
Yeah, no, I get your point. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's that. The last thing I wanted to comment on is I read something recently that I found interesting, and normally I would just kind of move on, but this was written by a former Ashland Selectboard member. And I'm just going to read a couple of statements, and then I have some thoughts on it. And the comment is, long gone are the days that we would elect frugal, prudent, and responsible people. For the last 15 years, activists have been flooding our boards. Then no longer are these boards humble stewards of steering policy. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've always looked at the work that we do as both stewardship and activism. I think all of us bring those two components to the work that we do. But of course, like all revisionist history, you got to put this into context. And, just to point out that this particular board member, the period of time that he served in, the stabilization fund for the town of Ashland in 2003 was $4,100. The entire stabilization fund. This you can look, this information is available from the state. You can look it up. The next year it went up dramatically. It went up to $34,000. And the year after that, it went up to $89,000. So, when I hear talk of stewardship and frugality, there's a disconnect there for me. So I thought it was a very interesting commentary on local government as it exists in 2021. And, the whole idea of being an activist, I think we all embrace that.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did you read this, Steve?
I'm not saying,
Damn.
but that's my rant for tonight. So I
right.
appreciate that. But I do really feel that we are, we combine both components, stewards and activism in a sense. And,
A number of you are certainly humble. I'm not, I'm not saying I am, but
Yeah, but I think to compare our financial condition today to this period of time, who's who's the better steward? I don't know. I do know that what existed back then was more of an old boys network. We can hardly call this board an old boys network. I mean, there's a couple of us that are old, but we've got two very intelligent, capable women that serve on this board, and and that's who we are today in 2021. So I'm done.
You sure?
Now I know why you wanted the motion to go past 10.
10:04. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome, sir. Miss Brandy.
Well, on that note, so so I just wanted a couple really quick things. One, last week I attended the Decisions at Every Turn coalition meeting. I had run into Kristen French at the Ashland Farmers Market when they had a community tent, and heard about some of the things that they were working on. And I had engaged with them pre-COVID, and like so many other things, it kind of fell off the radar a little bit during COVID. And so I am re-engaging with the coalition. They had presented some findings of a survey that they had recently done in spring 2021. as you may or may not remember, they generally, the schools give a adolescent health survey. It's kind of this Metro West survey that many communities give, talks about mental health and substance use, and kind of gauges where we are as a community and trends. The last time they had given that Metro West survey was actually in 2018. So it had been a while since that survey had been conducted. And so they had done sort of like an interim survey, looking to see where our middle school and high schoolers were as far as trends and substance use. And so as they get ready to start their survey, they're going to be, the high school and middle school are going to be taking the survey this fall. So we'll be seeing some new results post-COVID, which will be interesting to kind of measure those over time. But it's a group that's doing some really good work around, the coalition kind of spans, not only our schools. Jen Cutler, who is our Director of Social Emotional Learning, has just taken on as chair of the coalition. So I think that there's going to be some really good work. Amy Turcliffe had been the previous chair, and she did some great things. So I think the coalition will be moving forward, and I hope to be a part of that and the work that they're doing, which is really, really exciting. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, as Rob mentioned, was we had on Monday the Inclusionary Housing Public Forum with Mapc. And I know many of you were joining us for that. And so I wanted to thank you for being there. There was actually, I thought, a good turnout. It was definitely the data that Mapc provided. I think it's helpful to have a third party give the numbers as far as what the affordable housing needs are in our community, and really set the stage for why we would want an inclusionary housing bylaw. And then the public forum really talked about the trade-offs that we as a community need to think about, whether we want to encourage, what levers we want to pull as far as encouraging affordable housing. So the MAPC did a great job. Alexis Smith, who's kind of running the inclusionary housing component of this, did a great job presenting. The presentation is actually, for anyone that missed it, or she went super fast. So if you want to kind of get more, you can go back a second time. WACA had recorded it and had posted it. So I would encourage everyone. It's a good education of why affordable housing is a huge need in our community, and then how we can potentially craft this inclusionary zoning bylaw to help encourage affordable housing. This is a 6-month process. This is not a quick bylaw that we are going to be crafting. It's going to be there's going to be more participation from the public as we go on. So, the plan would be, as we put this together, that if it's a bylaw that we feel strongly about, that we would put it on the spring 2022 town warrant. But we are not there yet. This is sort of in its beginning stages to craft this. So we definitely want to hear from the public as we go through this process. So, but thank you all for being a part of the discussion. There were a lot of really good questions and comments that were posted during the public forum. So,
Brandy, if I could just add one or two quick things. One thing I would suggest to the chair is, whenever we have these kind of public forums that there's a bit of information, that it would be good to put it on our agenda for discussion at our next meeting. I think that's kind of a helpful way to kind of review what happened. And, so I had like two kind of takeaways. One was it was a very well done process, but unfortunately there was very few kind of general public people there. I'd say 5 maybe, but it was good. A lot of the select board was there. A lot of the planning board was there, which I thought was very helpful. So that's my point about it. It is difficult. It's just difficult to get people who are just kind of generalists to come out to something like this. And so when you take surveys, you know, they're good, but they're still somewhat limited. So, and then the other thing that I came away with, we have this inclusionary zoning and we potentially have it covering the whole town. And we should maybe think about limiting the places where we think the kind of housing we want to encourage should go, as opposed to a kind of a shotgun approach where the whole town is involved. So that's one thing that just kind of occurred to me and did come up. But anyway, so I didn't want to horn in on your discussion, but I thought that was a very useful session. So, you know, thanks for doing that, and thanks to MAPC. So sorry to interrupt so much.
No, I appreciate the feedback. I think it's good. I agree with you know, putting together some sort of recap of the meeting a little bit more formally.
Yeah.
Maybe that may be something that we want to we can if we have room on our next agenda, maybe we can do it on our next meeting. So it's still going to be a work in progress. So that's all I got.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, real quick, because it's almost 10:15 and the Red Sox lost 9-1.
Oh, boy.
So anyway, couple of things. That was a great seminar, and I greatly appreciate the input from the residents that did attend. But enough about that. This coming Saturday, October 23rd, the Diwali Festival of Lights will be held this Saturday at 3 p.m. at Kid Spot. I was asked to make that announcement and hope to see you all there. It was a wonderful turnout the last time, and hopefully it will be again, weather permitting. And
did you say 3 p.m., Joe?
3 p.m. starting at 3. Yes.
Did
Starting
you
at
say
3
Kid
p.m.
Spot? Isn't it the corner spot?
I mean, corner spot. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I said
okay.
Kid
Okay.
Spot. I'm
It's
sorry.
tied into
Corner
the, yeah,
spot.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. My eyes are starting to get a little blurry. Sorry about that. Hope to see you all there. On November 15th, starting at 12 p.m. at the Senior Center, the police and fire departments and their respective unions will be hosting a Veterans Day celebration. There'll be a free lunch and a short presentation honoring our veterans. Please call the community center in advance to become a participant for lunch and for the presentation as well.
Excuse me, Joe, will you be attending?
Will I be attending? Yes.
Good.
Absolutely.
I think Rich sent out Chief Briggs
He
sent
did,
out
yeah.
Yes, he did.
about
Yeah.
asking the select board to be available for.
See, yep, to be available. Absolutely. I will be there. And hopefully, if you can make it, I'd love to see a good portion. I'll be there as well. Sergeant Berman asked me to remind everybody again about the COVID testing site at the MBTA station. Again, some great numbers there. And lastly, actually 2 things. We're going to have a busy November acknowledging 5 new Eagle Scouts from Ashland from Troop 232. The celebration will be held on November 6th, and it's being held at the Framingham Country Club. Those who are receiving the Eagle Scouts are John and Thomas Giglia, Nick and Chris Balzic, and Andrew Gardner APEC. And a lot of their work was done with respect to town forest and some of the projects that were in there with raised paths, planting boards for raised garden beds for the senior center. So a lot of hard work, a lot of great ideas. And again, Ashland's right up there when it comes to Eagle Scouts, and this town being the recipient of a lot of great work and done by those groups. And lastly,
Actually, Joe, before you do that, will you be able to attend those ceremonies? Are you planning on doing that?
I'm gonna try to be there. If I
Okay.
can, I'll let everybody know, but I'm definitely gonna try to be there. I'm usually there all the
Okay.
time anyway, but, yeah. So we've got a lot of, proclamations to write up. On, next Friday on 10/29, we return COVID-free Halloween parade and party. We're back on. A little different this year. We're not using the school for those reasons, the protocol, COVID protocol. We will be gathering at St. Cecilia's parking lot, and thanks to Father Cornell allowing us to use that as a staging area. We'll start at 6 o'clock, and we'll be parading down Esty Street, across the Park Road, through the path at Stone Park to the pavilion, where goodie bags, cookies will be served, and best costume in 4 age categories. There'll be 12 $25 gift certificates, and there will be 2 $50 gift certificates to Burnham's for the best adult costume. Now, now, I don't know how many people will be present for the adult costumes, but it would be probably very interesting, to say the least.
That's fun.
It will be fun. And we're looking forward to it again. Hopefully, we're anticipating 300 kids, as we normally do. And the word is out. My wife said that all the kids passed her today as they were heading back from school, saying, we'll be there, we'll be there. So be prepared. So that'll be a lot of fun. And we're looking forward to it. A little different. And we're being escorted by police and fire departments again, as always. And it's greatly appreciated by them. And looking for a good time. And
I
with
can't
that,
wait.
oh, I'm telling you, I'm bringing my camera. And those that may not want to attend may want to drive by.
The whole big plan.
It's a big, and we'll leave it at that. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay, great.
Greaves, aye.
July.
Here, I.
Ginsman, aye.
Vignani, aye. Thank you all. We appreciate it. Let's go Red Sox. Let's try to beat them in Houston instead of at home. And,
All right, thanks,
we'll,
everybody.
we'll see you at our next meeting. Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you
Bye.
again
Good
for all your
night.
work.
Thank you.
Good night.